When we talk about artists from the last 10 to 15 years who had everything lined up for them, then for one reason or another never landed outside of one huge debut, some names that come to my mind would be Sky Ferreira, I Love McConan, Icona Pop. You might think of New Boys, you might think of Iggy Azealia, maybe even Silento, and in very specific corners of the internet, a name that comes up over and over again is Azealia Banks. Azealia Banks is a rapper from Harlem. She is also, depending on who you ask, a witch, some kind of celebrity culture oracle, a genius, a menace of the internet, and the most talented artist of her generation to never release a second album. If you were even mildly online between 2012 and honestly right now, you already knew her reputation before you even really knew that she made music. Despite a genuinely great debut single, a catalog full of sleeper hits and deep cuts that her fans will go to war over, and a talent that almost no one has ever really disputed, most people's relationship with her career isn't through the music at all. It's through her inflammatory tweets, her reaction videos.
What is the tea? The girls are fighting! No!
The celebrity beefs.
Beyonce, Russell Crowe, RZA, and SZA.
And the many controversies. And I guess now would be a perfect time to give a trigger and content warning for literally everything. Pause to read. But to talk about Azealia Banks, we have to go back to the beginning. Azealia grew up the youngest of three in Harlem, and her childhood wasn't the best. Her father died of pancreatic cancer when she was just 2 years old, so her mother was left to take care of her and the rest of her siblings, and her mom would work long retail shifts on 57th Street, and then when she wasn't doing that, she would just disappear for long stretches of time. She'd leave them with Dominican women she paid to watch them, but honestly, her being gone was better than her being around, because Azealia has said that she was very violent long before she had been professionally diagnosed with schizophrenia. She beat them with baseball bats, burned them with curling irons, threw bleach on her and called her ugly, worthless, unlovable. She used to brag about practicing witchcraft, even suggested that she had killed her father using it. By her early teens, Azealia said her mother kept reminding her that when she turned 18 she would have to leave her house, but she ended up moving out well before that, and she eventually got into LaGuardia High School. Commonly referred to as the Fame School, it's your stereotypical performing arts school that you would see depicted in shows like Victorious or Fame. LaGuardia has a long list of recognizable alumni, from Jennifer Aniston to Timothy Chalamet, Al Pacino, Robert De Niro, Nicki Minaj, and a lot of others who went on to have successful careers in entertainment. It's seen as one of the hardest arts high schools in the country to get into. Azealia studied performing arts there, and this is where she credits a large part of her performance skills. Around the time she starts getting into rap, her boyfriend would take her to these cyphers, and one day she just jumps in, spits a verse, and everybody's like, oh, she's really good. From there, it's every day after school. She's home recording on whatever setup she can get her hands on. She was in everybody's emails, producers, DJs, managers. Eventually, she lands a development deal with XL Recordings when she's 17. They fly her out to London to work with Richard Russell, the label head. And for a minute, it feels like everything's lining up, but it falls apart fast due to creative differences and personality differences, and within a year she's dropped. She starts picking up odd jobs, selling keychains at a jazz club. She even tried stripping at a club in Queens, but she only lasted 2 weekends because, as she said, she was such a chicken. Even through all that, she kept posting like little songs and demos online, just hoping someone would notice, but things just keep unraveling. She gets evicted from her apartment in Inwood. She has nowhere to go, so she moves to Montreal and crashes with some friends and continues to work on her music. But when her visa runs out, she's back to square one. No label, no home, no plan, and she knows she needs a hit, and a hit quick. Then Azealia drops the absolute smash hit, 212. Recorded with basically no budget, just a mic and the Lazy J Float My Boat sample. It was huge overseas, hit number 12 on the UK singles chart, charted all across Europe, but in the States it barely made a dent, but it was still a huge hit nonetheless, charting or not. Every major outlet called it genius. It's been in Pitch Perfect, The Bling Ring. Emma Watson allegedly requested it because she was obsessed with the song, and it was played at endless runway shows. Kanye tweeted about it. Azealia was literally one of the 5 accounts he followed at the time. Gwyneth Paltrow shouted her out. Nas and Q-Tip co-signed her. Gaga loved her. Kelly Rowland too, apparently. Even that girl who ate her tampon was playing 212. After 212, everything just starts moving very fast. By early 2012, she's working with Nicola Formichetti, who at the time was the creative director of Mugler and Lady Gaga's Styles' personal stylist. He has her record Bambi for Muglier's men's show in Paris, styles her for V Magazine, oversees the Licorice video. During Fashion Week, she performs at a private dinner hosted by Karl Lagerfeld. He even designed a custom sweater for her. She's sitting front row at Just Cavalli next to Solange. She's performing at Kanye's after show. All of this within a year of 212 dropping. The world was literally hers. Every door was open. She had the internet behind her, the fashion industry, Mac deals, hip-hop cosigns, a huge Universal Music deal under Polydor and Interscope. Every opportunity was on the table. All she had to do was capitalize on it. So Azealia gets into her first big internet fight with another rapper also making noise in 2011, Kreayshawn. You know, Miss Gucci Gucci, Louis Louis, Fendi Fendi Prada. She was part of that little wave of white girl rappers popping up out of nowhere. Her, Iggy, this girl K-Flay, all trying to make something shake. Kreayshawn ran with the so-called white girl mob, Lil Debbie and V Nasty, and they all had that same annoying Bay Area hipster thing going on and a bad habit of saying the N-word. They were basically the bad babies and woke Vickies of the time. Apparently, Kreayshawn reposted the 212 video, but she shared it from a porn site, which Azealia obviously took as shade. She gets on Twitter like, at Kreayshawn, you think you're funny? You're a dumb and you can't rap. I'll sit on your face. Fall back, slut. Kreayshawn tries to play dumb. Did I just get smashed on Twitter because I was supporting a fellow female? I sure did. Confused. Come on, you mad because I retweeted your link because I like your music? Poof, get out of here. Not a fan anymore. Azealia, of course, isn't having it, but instead of dragging it out, she kind of cuts it off. By February, the music was moving, like really moving. She had just announced her first headlining UK tour, a stacked festival lineup, Coachella in April. You know, this is the year where she has the purple hair and she's running around with Florence Welch and Katy Perry and Santi Gold. People seem to really enjoy her set this year, and at this point, as far as I can tell, there's no reason to hate Azealia Banks. And right in the middle of this, she kicks off what would become her biggest and longest running feuds, the one with Iggy Azalea and by extension, T.I. Now technically this beef goes all the way back to 2011 during the peak of 212. Around that same time, Azealia starts throwing subs on Twitter. After the CMJ festival in September 2011, she tweets something like, I'm next level, I had a song being a Barbie before Nicki Minaj did, here's the link to my song, and F Iggy Azalea, I had a song called before she ever did. Here's mine, it's better. At least that's according to Iggy. Azalea's actual tweet read, once wrote a song called Barbie but Nicki Minaj blew up like the week after, so I took it down. I felt corny. Also wrote a song called before Iggy Azalea, which then led Iggy to subtweet, it's never about who did it first, it's always been about who did it better, which Azealia then responds to. And that's how the beef starts. But things really blow up after Double XL's 2012 freshman issue. Double XL's freshman class is basically hip-hop's draft day. Every year the magazine picks 10 or so next up rappers and throws them all on a fold-out cover. It's one of the biggest cosigns you can get early in your career. The 2012 lineup was stacked. You have Future, Kid Ink, French Montana, Macklemore, Roscoe Dash, Hobson, Danny Brown, Machine Gun Kelly when he was a rapper, and the fan-voted 10th spot went to Iggy Azalea. When the Double XL cover dropped, Azealia was not having it. She tweets, how can you endorse a white woman who called herself a runaway slave master? Referencing a lyric from Iggy's song DRUGS. Iggy responds with, you can't block my blessings. Today I'm celebrating. Get with it or kick rocks. Don't bother adding me with any of your salty thoughts because I'm hashtag blocking that today. Then here comes T.I., who was her mentor at the time. She was signed to his label, Grand Hustle. He's going on radio and saying,
was she unhappy with Iggy being on there, or was Azealia Banks unhappy because she was not on there?
I think that's a fair question for Azealia Banks.
And strategically, if she really cares about a freshman cover, maybe she could hope that, you know, she'll suck enough to get shelved, and then next year, when the freshman cover comes back around, maybe she'll still be a freshman.
Anyway, Azealia wasn't letting T.I. slide either. She gets on Twitter and starts lighting him up. LOL, I never needed the next to sit up on a radio show with me and defend me. Come on, T.I. Is not scared of you or whatever you got to say on some radio show. LMFAO, how you a grown man commenting on what's going on between two girls? Come on, son, stop it. So now everybody's watching and Iggy decides to post this Dear World Notes apology. It's the most rambling, self-pitying thing you've ever read. She says she doesn't hate any race. Her defense is that she got the runaway slave master line from a Kendrick Lamar lyric. Then she takes it a step further and basically accuses everyone of gatekeeping hip-hop. Other races who grew up listening to hip-hop don't get a place too? We Have a Place. March rolls around, Azalea's got another artist falling out, this time with someone that she actually looked up to, Lil' Kim. She gets on Twitter talking about how someone she admires is acting brand new, says her little feelings are hurt, and calls women petty. She doesn't name names, but everyone put 2 and 2 together when she unfollows Lil' Kim and starts following Nicki Minaj. Mind you, Kim and Nicki have been beefing since George Bush was in office, so it didn't take long for people to connect the dots. Azealia claims that she and Lil' Kim were supposed to collaborate on a song called Van Vogue, which was tied to an Alexander Wang campaign. She says she sent Kim a reference verse, and allegedly Kim gets offended and has her assistant send back a long email about how Kim writes her own raps and doesn't need anyone feeding her lines, which, like, fair, especially when she's already being accused of not writing her raps at this time. Kim's team eventually comes out saying there's no beef, they've never even met, and the whole thing is made up drama. Kim ends up going on The Breakfast Club saying that she's never met Azealia a day in her life and that it must be in these girls' contracts to come at her, but Azealia doesn't let it go. She starts throwing more shade, tweeting, "I just wish she would hurry up and be legendary again. She's better than PayPal mixtapes and useless press." Like Lil' Kim on a billboard in Soho? Poppin' idea, right? But no, she'd rather tour dingy clubs and keep her pride. So now every time she says something about me, I'm going to very kindly remind her to get her together. And the funny part is, like, 5 years later in 2017, Azealia actually apologizes on Instagram. She says the verse was just a guide, not ghostwriting, and that the whole thing was misunderstood. And Kim, to everyone's surprise, responds super graciously, calls the apology sweet, and says she's proud of Azalea's growth. So in May, Azealia makes it to the Met Gala. Azealia at the time was the 4th rapper in the gala's history to attend. Her escort for the night is Alexander Wang, who at the time was basically the next big thing in fashion. This is months before Balenciaga names him creative director. The theme that year was Schiaparelli and Prada, Impossible Conversations, and a few days before the gala, Azealia tweets that she's been invited to perform for Prada next week in NYC. Page 6 later reports that Nicki Minaj was actually supposed to perform originally, but never signed the contract, so Vogue and Prada then decided on Azealia Banks. She performs a short set inside the museum, keeps doing her Fashion Week and Mugler appearances, hits all the parties, but she never goes back to the Met after that, and realistically she probably never will. After the Met, Wang puts her in his Fall Tea by Alexander Wang campaign. They shoot the official video for Van Vogue without Lil' Kim, and at the time it really looked like she was about to be his new muse, but nothing ever comes of it, and whatever friendship or relationship they had dies after this. By 2018, Azalea's on Instagram Live saying he mistreated her, and then starts posting emails from one of his employees. People flood her comments and DMs with their own stories, a lot of them accusing him of being predatory. I'm sure you've heard. She starts sharing those anonymous accounts on her page. 2 years later, when the big allegations against him surface, everyone's suddenly like, Azealia Banks was right all along, which is, you know, a recurring theme across her career. Now, she also supposedly tells him to go back to Chinatown and make fortune cookies. That's unverified, but considering that she did tweet things like, "Who let Alexander Wang back out of the fortune cookie factory and send him back to the Chinese slipper factory from which he came?" It's unfortunately not hard to believe. When someone later brings up the Met Gala, she says, "I hated this and I hated him. He told me I was ugly in literally every underhanded way he could. I did not enjoy this." Then the Bon Qui Qui thing. Bon Qui Qui being the old Mad TV character by Angela Johnson, the same woman who did the Asian nail salon bit.
Honey, why you don't have? You look so pretty, like model.
Alexander Wang decided to bring Bon Qui Qui back for a Tea by Alexander Wang ad, directed by the founder of the Proud Boys. So Kanye, Coachella, the Met Gala, Van Vogue, and then in May, she finally drops her debut EP, 1991. Named after her birth year. This is real cute, real straight to the point. It's 4 songs, you get in, you get out. 212 and Licorice had the girls in the chokehold. So then she adds the title track, which is genuinely one of the best songs she's ever made. And then Van Vogue. As a body of work, it's a 10 out of 10. It's crazy how good it is. She's very deep in that early 90s house sound, and it still sounds fresh. Like in 2025, 1991 still eats in a way that a lot of people's full albums don't. And everyone knew it. 84 on Metacritic, best of list in Rolling Stone and Time. Like 2 months later in July, she drops Fantasea, a 19-track mixtape that she self-released. She said it was just something to hold fans over while her album kept getting delayed, but it ended up becoming one of her most career-defining projects. A very beloved mixtape mixtape. This is also the first time that she really committed to an aesthetic outside of the 90s like Euro Club Kid thing that she was doing to capitalize off 212. This project pulling heavily from C-Punk. Azealia became associated with C-Punk very quickly. Depending on who you ask, she either is one of the early adopters who pioneered it, or she was simply the most visible person doing it at the time. Either way, she positioned herself as like the gatekeeper of that aesthetic and still references it.
So all these Tumblr kids and all these whatever, they'll like argue. They'll be like, Azealia Banks didn't invent C-Punk, she didn't invent C-Punk, and you know, while I may not have invented it, I definitely like am kind of the face of C-Punk. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Fantasea, Azealia Banks, that was a time. You know what I mean? Like,
she also had an online video game created to promote Fantasy. The Fantasy production lineup was mostly her circle of underground names and collaborators, but there was so much drama behind the scenes. Like almost every other song had some kind of controversy attached to it. What gets left out of most discussions is that Fantasy is a mixtape. In hip-hop, the entire foundation of mixtape culture is rapping over other people's music. These projects aren't originally intended for commercial release, so samples are used freely in the same way Beam Me Up Scotty had to alter and cut songs once it went on streaming in 2021. Paradiso is a good example of this. You can't stream it on Spotify because the sample wasn't cleared, and it's reportedly geo-blocked on several other platforms, but still available on Apple Music. Fuck Up the Fun is built around a Dutch bubbling track. Diplo was originally credited as the sole producer, which caused backlash and the credits were later corrected. Azealia also had to pay out $20,000 related to the track. She then got into a dispute with Dominique Young Unique, who accused her of taking lyrics. Esta Noche had the most public fallout. The beat comes from a Munchie bootleg that itself samples Montel Jordan's Get It On Tonight. Like in hip-hop, and EDM bootlegs are also usually unlicensed. Azealia initially used this instrumental as is for this free mixtape, which in that context is standard behavior. The issue began when her team chose Esta Noche as the next official single, released artwork, set an iTunes date, and credited as Azealia Banks featuring Munchie without clearing it with him first. Multiple outlets reported that her team offered him $25,000 and a public apology. Then it increased to $50,000 and he still declined. It wasn't about the money, it was about her team trying to commercially release something that he never agreed to have commercially released in the first place. Both sides are already in murky territory since his track is built on an R&B hit he almost definitely didn't clear either, but he still had the right to decide whether he wanted to take on that risk or not. And after this, she is not in good graces with Munchie or the EDM community for that matter. After Fantasy, Azealia decides to set her sights higher and tries to start something with Nicki Minaj. She goes on Twitter saying that she was invited to open for Nicki's Pink Friday Arena tour in the UK that winter. I'm assuming it's the Pink Friday Reloaded one. According to her, she had to decline because she was finishing her album. A few hours later, Nicki tweets, #man these delirious. And everyone knows how Nicki likes to subtweet, Azealia included. So she replies, "Did you mean delusional? Delirious was the wrong word." Then adds, "Use good grammar when insulting others," before correcting her own bad grammar. #very quickly taking your job. She even tweets that she doesn't believe in rap game hierarchy and just wait until I drop this album. In between all of this, she gets into another petty beef with Jim Jones over the word vamp. That same month, Azalea's on the red carpet for GQ's Men of the Year Awards in London. She does this quick little Capital FM UK interview and casually drops that she's been working with Lady Gaga on songs for Art Pop. A few days later, in a Brazilian TV interview, she admits that they haven't actually recorded anything yet. It's all been through email and file swapping, so no in-person sessions. But she does reveal the titles of the two songs they've been working on, Red Flame and Ratchet. Ratchet ends up being the one that everyone latches onto. Right after Azealia mentions it, Gaga tweets @Azealia Banks, "Human Blood, XOXOXO, #Ratchet." Azealia replies, "When Mother Monster calls." Then DJ White Shadow, Gaga's main producer at the time, teases the beat on Twitter and even plays it at some event. So naturally, Stan Twitter starts making things up. Somehow Rihanna gets dragged into it. She and Gaga are tweeting at each other during the 2012 VMAs. They're spotted out at the same London club with Jay-Z and Chris Martin. And not long after, Rihanna tweets a line from Paparazzi with the hashtag Ratchets. Azealia also said around the same time that she had been wanting to work with Rihanna but hadn't yet, so everyone decides that it's actually a secret collab with Gaga. By October, Gaga's on her Little Monster blog claiming that she's finished Ratchet with Azealia and that or another song called T could be the lead single for Art Pop. And then somehow Beyonce gets added to the narrative. She posts 2 photos wearing bamboo hoop earrings that say Ratchet, just like the ones Gaga had been wearing. So now in everyone's mind, she's also on the song. And at the same time, Gaga's teasing a possible Telephone Part 2. And then this fake handwritten Beyonce tracklist starts circulating online, supposedly from an album called Mrs. Carter, set for April 2013. This was pre-self-titled surprise drop. And right at the top, Ratchet, credited to Beyonce featuring Lady Gaga and Azealia Banks, and is also marked as the lead single for March. Azealia doesn't exactly help matters either. She goes on record saying that she's worked with Kanye, Gaga, and Beyonce and doesn't specify on what, which only feeds the rumors. But then Gaga eventually clears it up in a Kiss FM interview, confirming that Azealia won't be on Art Pop.
BB Mai says, will Azealia Banks be on Art Pop or not? The thought of you two together is killing me.
Oh, is she? No, she's not on Art Pop. No.
Oh, okay.
But I think she's a fantastic vocalist. So, but no, she's not.
And when Beyonce drops her self-titled album that December, Ratchet is nowhere to be found. The only version that ever resurfaces is the instrumental DJ White Shadow releases later that year. As for Red Flame, Gaga actually hinted at that one first back in July 2012, tagging it #PumpIt, which was the original working title. Fast forward to February 2013, Azalea's on Ustream rapping along to parts of the song.
Pump it, bitch, to the haters of birth. 6-inch lizard skin, alligator purse. What I said on that Red Flame? How do those raps go again?
Then 3 years later, in March 2016, she gets on Twitter saying the song was originally called Pump It and that she basically wrote the whole thing except for Gaga's tiny hook. She even tells fans that she could drop it on a new beat if Gaga gives the green light. DJ White Shadow jumps into the thread like, you can release it if you want. Azealia replies that he kept calling the track Red Flame when Gaga's name was Moombahton or Pump It, and she wants everyone to know she's the one who came up with Red Flame. The demo does finally leak in August 2016. Gaga does not acknowledge it. And obviously after getting cut from Art Pop, Azalea's salty for years.
No.
She's like, she's got a bad attitude.
Yeah.
Girl, we know Gaga.
Gaga, we've been known that. That's why we didn't want her on there.
She broke.
That same year at the VMAs, Gaga performs in a seashell string bikini, and a few days later, Gaga tweets that she'll be posting a list of acceptable attire for Swine Fest. Azealia replies, at Lady Gaga, sounds a lot like Azealia Banks' mermaid balls. Not picking a fight, just all looks so familiar to me. And Gaga just responds with a gif of Ariel. Then the rest of 2012, she is living on the road for the Mermaid Ball tour. It kicks off in June with a New York date. She does another in LA that July, and 2 London shows at the end of September, and like 2 weeks running around the UK in October. She's got Brooke Candy on this tour, Charlie XCX, Shiesty, Rai Rai, Cara Delevingne's there. Azealia will end up feuding with most of them later, but we'll get to that. New Year's Day, she drops BBD. It's clearly meant to be the start of the rollout for her debut album that people have been waiting for, except she's like, oh, this isn't the real single. The real single is Young Rapunzel, coming in March. But then she also says that the real single was supposed to be Miss Amour / Miss Camaraderie, which then gets shelved. So we get Young Rapunzel. But no album, no release date, no nothing, but plenty of time to feud. So she starts beefing with Angel Hayes. Angel, now known as Rose, was this rising rapper out of New York by way of Detroit. She was really starting to get traction around this time. She just landed the XXL freshman cover that year, placed third on BBC's Sound of 2013 poll. And what's funny is that just a few months earlier, Azealia had just apologized to Krayshawn on Twitter and suggested doing a collab with her and Angel Hayes when she still liked her. But of course, like 90% of Azealia Banks' beefs, it starts with a tweet. Azealia, the self-appointed queen of New York, posts, seriously, if you were not born and raised in New York, don't claim New York. You are not a New Yorker. Angel takes it personally because she's got a 2012 song called New York where she literally says, I run New York, and she's got an EP of the same name. So she assumes Azealia subbing her and responds. Azealia claps back, claiming that Angel had been in her DMs trying to eat her.
You wanted to eat my till I came.
I want to eat your mother.
You said
Girl,
that.
are you kidding
You
me?
can deny it
Are
if you
you
want to.
kidding me?
Your tongue kissed me in my mouth,
Let's
and you
also
said
talk
you
about-
wanted to eat me till I came.
It just goes on and on from there. Angel drops a diss track and calls Azealia a charcoal skin. And then somehow, I don't even know how or why, internet blogger and professional loser Perez Hilton inserts himself into this. Azealia, who's openly bisexual and whose fan base is literally 90% gay men, ends up calling him the F slur. Perez responds saying her music is cute, but that the attention seeking and wishing death on people is pathetic and hurtful. You drag while others choose to uplift. Now hold on 1 minute. Like, the concept of this man being so taken aback by everything that Azealia Banks said. Perez built his entire career on outing people, bullying celebrities, humiliating young women, and posting upskirt photos. He didn't decide to turn over a new leaf until 3 years prior, and even after that he was still being nasty online. So
You know what? That's why you got punched in the face by will.i.am, because you're a...
But yeah, Azalea's comments are obviously very homophobic and gross. Azealia doubles down, obviously, and gives a new definition to this slur and tries to justify it by saying that she knew what she meant. She didn't mean it in any harmful way. Eventually, she gives this half apology that reads, "My most sincere apologies to anyone who was indirectly offended by my foul language. Not sorry for Perez, though. LOL." Anyway, did you guys know that Azealia Banks was supposed to be on the original Harlem Shake remix? Azealia, Harlem native, drops her own Harlem Shake remix on SoundCloud on February 14, 2013. It's up for like 2 minutes before Bauer and Matt Descent yank it down. She tweets at Bauer, "Why you cock blocking though?" And he replies, "'Cause it's not your song. LOL. She swears she has emails proving he gave her permission. She claims Diplo told her that they wanted Juicy J for the official remix instead, which is why Bauer was cock blocking. Says he doesn't belong in hip hop and he doesn't even know what a real Harlem Shake is, and he doesn't even belong in Harlem." And of course she caps it off by calling him the F slur. Now, legally, Bauer was well within his rights, but also he let other producers and artists keep their little Harlem Shake remixes on the internet. So maybe he just didn't like Azealia Banks. etc and Brill's, two EDM producers on Diplo's Mad Descent label, jump in. They'd already had issues with Azealia over BBD, claiming she lifted parts of their song Swoop, credited Apple Juice Kid instead, and never cleared it. So now she's fighting like 4 people at once on Twitter, and she tweets, "You guys are all, may you drown in your tree," which obviously brings Perez Hilton crawling back out of his hole. From there, it's just tweet after tweet after tweet. A bit later, Bauer gives this interview to the Daily Beast, basically saying, yeah, there were plans to release a version with Azealia, just wasn't up to par, so they decided to scrap it and drop the instrumental alone. He says they told her, "Please don't release your version," and she said, "Well, I'm going to put it online anyway," and they begged her not to, and she did it anyway. Mind you, all of this is happening in early February, ends later that month, and the album rollout that was supposed to start February 12th came and went, delayed again, and now she's beefing with Shiesty. So Shiesty, a London rapper, also signed to Polydor around the same time as Azealia. They had just worked on Neptune for Fantasy. Everything's cool until March 2013 when Shiesty drops Control It featuring Azealia. Azealia decides she hates the video, she calls it bogus, and tells Shiesty not to release it. Then Shiesty and her team get hit with a takedown notice from Azalea's team. The video gets pulled, and according to Shiesty's camp, that was not what they'd agreed on. Around the same time, Azealia tweets the release date for Young Rapunzel, and Shiesty replies, "Are you sure? You guys always changing dates." Then Azealia starts clowning Shiesty's acne. Shiesty then drops an Azealia Banks diss track called Doppelganger.
Now I don't even know who Azalea is. I must have been talking to a doppelganger.
Okay, so all of this is happening while Azealia is touring Australia for the Future Music Festival, a huge traveling EDM/pop festival that ran through late February into early March. The lineup that year included the Stone Roses, Prodigy, Block Party, Rita Ora, and others. Azealia, of course, manages to beef with 2 of the acts on this tour. First, the Stone Roses. She tweets that their crew started sound checking in the middle of her set, calls them old saggy white men, and later says she almost fought Ian Bryan backstage before performing with the Prodigy. 2 days later, she skips the Adelaide date, blaming road hags and sabotage. Then there's Rita Ora. At first it seems friendly. Azealia tweets she's excited to see her. They take a photo together. Azealia captions it, "Me with the third lady of Rock Nation." But that truce lasts about a day. Rita posts a picture of jelly shoes on Instagram with the caption, "Did you ever think you'd see these again? I did. I'm bringing them back." And Azealia immediately replies, "At Rita Ora, I already did the jellies last year, girl. Try again. I can't with these girls." She keeps going on. She's mad she's Rihanna's understudy. Azealia says Rita's been trying to intimidate her the whole festival, taking photos of her, posting and deleting like a weak. Then she posts a screenshot of a supposed text from Rita, and she captions it, "Shut up, Rita Ora." Like, I could only imagine what it was like being an Azealia Banks stan at this time. Like, this past year has just been disappointment after disappointment. She's on Twitter going off on coke rants every other day. She's arguing with every person ever. Later that year, she gets into it with Disclosure and scraps a whole song over a misunderstanding in an interview.
Well, yeah, I did something with Disclosure, but they were like really rude in an interview, so I canned it. I might leak it, and to be honest, I've got better stuff on my record.
Make it a B or a C side.
Yeah, it can be an F side. A f you side.
She says she was brought to tears over A$AP Rocky's ignorant comments about dark-skinned girls wearing red lipstick, and then drags him and tells him to come out the closet. She thinks Marina from Marina and the Diamonds is subtweeting her, so now Marina's catching it. She gets into it with Lily Allen over God knows what, and honestly, Lily had been already tweeting slick, so I don't even know what officially set this off. But Lily responds by posting her husband's eggplant and blackface with an afro and a chain, and then tweets, "I've had 2 kids since 212 dropped, and I bet my album still comes out first. Just scared of the ball out." And unfortunately, that kind of sums up where Azealia is right now, because none of this on its own should matter. Artists argue online all the time, unfortunately. And if you ignore the slurs and the weird fixation on white men, she's really just annoying. The issue is not the spats. The issue is, where is the project? Where is this music she keeps teasing? Her fans are still waiting on Broke with Expensive Taste, her debut album that she said would be out July 2012. And it's a whole year later and there's still no album, no rollout, not even an explanation really. She keeps stalling with these random one-off singles. Young Rapunzel, which we're about to talk about for the umpteenth time, was supposed to come out on March 26th, gets delayed, then finally drops on April 16th, and then we move on to the next single, ATM Jam. Now, this one is produced by Pharrell. She debuts it at Glastonbury in June. The studio version premieres in July, and then it officially comes out August 30th, featuring Pharrell. Except Pharrell basically abandons this song immediately after its release. He doesn't promote it. He doesn't even really acknowledge it. Really, he does not give a about this song. Azealia later says that he straight up changed his mind about wanting to be associated with her. In one interview, Azealia says that it was originally meant for Beyonce. It was a Pharrell leftover meant for Mac Miller, and that Polydor basically forced her to take it when she wanted Miss Amore. She also says he backed out because the controversy felt like too much, which is funny considering that that same year he turns around and does Blurred Lines, which was way more controversial. Anyway, she ends up filming a video for ATM Jam without Pharrell, one with Clarence Fuller, another one directed by Ronnie Alwyn for the Kaytranada version, which, sorry, is better than the Pharrell production. And yes, that video has Alexa Demi in it. By November, she says that she's pulling the track off the album entirely, and then some fans swear that it was on streaming for a while, then it mysteriously vanished off of US platforms and then popped back up later. Some people even say Pharrell had it taken down. And then in the middle of all that, she randomly leaks Count Contessa, a song that's not supposed to be on her anticipated debut album, but the sequel to Fantasy 2, which she said would drop in July 2014. And yeah, it's 2025 and that sequel still does not exist. But 2014 feels like the year Azealia finally wants to get this album out. Like, she's tired of being clowned and tired of fighting with her label about it. During the 2014 Grammy, she's on Twitter begging Universal to let her go. "I'm tired of having to consult a group of old white guys about my black girl craft." She's tweeting Sony asking them to buy her out, saying she'd literally give anything to be on XL right now. Girl. Someone asked her if the March delay for Broke with Expensive Taste is true, and she just replies, "The label changed their mind," followed by hashtag life of a human commodity, hashtag Universal doesn't care, hashtag they're at the Grammys, hashtag hot wings. After that, she starts threatening to leak the album herself in April, and obviously April 15th comes and goes, no leak, no album. But this ends up being the turning point. In July, she officially leaves Interscope and Polydor and signs with Jeff Kawutanet's firm, Prospect Park. So she finally gets someone who's willing to deal with her antics. And then on November 6th, Azealia pulls a Beyonce and surprise drops the album on iTunes. And this album, Broke with Expensive Taste, is so good it's actually infuriating. Ice Princess, Idol Delilah, Desperado, Luxury, JFK, Miss Camaraderie, Miss Amore, back to back to back to back. Like, I am begging all of you to bootleg this album, please. And I'm so happy she retired right after this and dropped it and maintained her legacy with no controversy whatsoever. Like right after this, she gets into it with Eminem. Now, if you've seen more than one of my videos, you know Eminem loves coming for the girls. Britney, Christina, Mariah, Jessica Simpson, Gaga, Tori Spelling, his ex-wife. And there's this misconception, one that I've definitely fed into before, that he primarily beefs with women, but that technically is not true. He's had public beefs with Ja Rule, Benzino, Moby, Cannabis, Cage, Machine Gun Kelly, so he does come for the men too. But the difference is that when it's men, it's rap beef. It's diss tracks. Like, these are just usually unsuspecting women that he is just meeting with like unprovoked nastiness, and him and Azealia are alike in that way. So in 2014, during the Shady Cypher, Eminem raps about punching Lana Del Rey twice, like Ray Rice. Ray Rice being football's Chris Brown. And Azealia hops on Twitter and goes, "But does Eminem know that I will personally punch him in his mouth? Tell him to go back to his trailer park and eat his microwave Hot Pocket dinner and suck on his sister's titties." She also talks about how she's been a victim of domestic violence herself and that the Ray Rice joke wasn't funny. She points out how for all his reputation as this diss god, Eminem really only targets women or harmless people like Moby, but would never press Jay-Z like that. In 2015, Eminem responds in a freestyle.
Oh, and Azealia Banks, just want to tell you thanks. Now I got trailer skanks sending me ballpark franks and the mail is pranks. And Hot Pockets. Thanks a lot.
After this, she walks it all back and is just Eminem's biggest cheerleader. And then by 2022, she's over it completely. She says he's always been annoying and garbage and that she can't, won't, and refuses to consume white male anger in rap form. Says she'd take Paul Wall and Bubba Sparks over him any day, and that this whole angry white guy shtick is basically the blueprint for school shooters. But back to the album. Because while all of this is happening, Azealia is supposed to be promoting Broke with Expensive Taste. Throughout December 2014, she launches 16 Days of Azealia, posting breakdowns of each track, dropping holiday merch, teasing snippets from a book she's writing, and that all leads to her Hot 97 interview with Ebro in the morning. A lot of what she says in this interview has to do with all the that's been brewing with T.I., Tiny, and Iggy, because earlier that summer, she'd gotten into it with T.I. again. In June, T.I. and Iggy dropped No Mediocre, and Azealia jumps on Twitter like, "You want no mediocre, but have you seen your wife?" And then she keeps going, then shouting bad bitch this, bad bitch that, is almost always at home with some busted bumpkin. She says Tiny has meth face and can't read. Then she says she saw T.I. backstage at a Kanye show and stood next to him on purpose just to see if he'd say something. "I'm taller than you in my heels. Come see me and come by yourself." T.I. goes on The Breakfast Club acting confused at first and then starts talking about a no tolerance policy when it comes to his family, sharks in the water, and then he posts screenshots from her Atlantis music video calling her a musty mouth, thought bot, bad body, syphilis, lipped, rectum vomit, like just an absurd collection of words, and threatens to end her if she talks about his family again. Well, I guess that was a threat and not a promise, because Azealia keeps talking. She tweets, "Guess who's about to get sued for threatening me? Nigga love jail. Grown ass man with kids went and cropped his favorite part of the Atlantis video and really threatened to put hands on me? LOL. Yeah, I shouldn't have said it, but so what? It was funny." TMZ catches T.I. later and he doubles down.
"I chew your throat off your neck if I need to."
So all of this is still fresh during the Hot 97 interview. You know, she's still going on about confronting T.I.
It's like, I dare him to say something to me. I dare him to do something. Like, I would love it. Have my sister with me, like, we would have jumped T.I.
And Tiny can't read.
Your wife can't read. And they got her on fucking TV. They making fun. They got the fucking sound effects on her, like, boing. She reading the thing while her finger, it's like, boing, boing, like.
And T.I. is a shoe-shining coon. When Iggy comes up, she obviously still is not over the runaway slave master line, and the fact that this white woman who puts on an Atlanta accent is currently being propped up by the industry, while black female rappers who aren't Nicki Minaj get almost no recognition. So when institutions like the Grammys overstate her importance in hip-hop categories, she finds it insulting and calls it cultural smudging. Then add on the fact that she's biting off Nicki Minaj in her aesthetics and album titles, and Azealia basically feels gaslit by the industry's response to her criticism of Iggy. And she's literally brought to tears while discussing this.
Y'all everywhere, like, I don't want to share this with y'all.
Ebro and Rosenberg try to do the usual, don't you think you get in your own way by, you know, tweeting your seemingly petty grievances at all times of the day? And she's like, no. Says she has every right to speak how she wants and that it's the media sensationalizing it, not her. Says she puts that same energy into her music. She just refuses to sanitize herself for white audiences or corporate comfort. After this interview, her and Iggy are on Twitter acting a fool. Iggy posts this long, condescending, special message about how Azealia created her own situation, doesn't have the mental capacity to understand it, is miserable, angry, crying on the radio. Azealia calls her itchy areola and iffy azuzu. Says the interview went over her head completely. Says none of this will make sense to her until she herself has black children in America. Q-Tip jumps in with a hip-hop history lesson for Iggy. Solange sends support to Azealia. For some reason, Azealia is asked about Action Bronson, and they get into an argument where she keeps making fat jokes. And Azealia also says T.I. is too indoctrinated for her to even clown him anymore. But T.I. jumps in anyway, like, actually, my white artists are built different. And starts rambling about how Iggy isn't part of the white people stealing our culture pipeline. Ends it with hashtag F it up, hashtag hustle gang over everything. I'm so sick of T.I., you guys. So we roll into 2015 and Kendrick does that Billboard interview. And he says something to the effect of, when we don't respect ourselves, how can we expect them to respect us? In response to the police brutality conversations coming off of 2014. And Azealia calls it the dumbest she's ever heard a black man say. This turns into a whole three-way Twitter battle with Kid Cudi and Luke Fiasco that drags on for days and goes absolutely nowhere. And then this is when she also gets into it with Erykah Badu, and this one is so stupid. Someone asked Erykah on Twitter if she listens to Azealia Banks. Erykah responds with one word: tried. Shady. Azealia starts calling her jealous and old, says she hates younger spirits and that she's bitter. Erykah then drops her location on Twitter and she's in Azealia City. They do seemingly make up, but Azealia still wants to run that fade. After this, she's also beefing with black media outlets and BET. She calls the Female Rapper Award a running joke because Nicki wins it every year, which isn't untrue. Now, there is music happening in 2015. The physical release of Broke with Expensive Taste drops in March. We get 3 music videos this year. She delivers another very well-received Coachella set. I believe this is the year that she's yelling into that megaphone. She's in the club, she's at the festival, she's outside. This is supposed to be the victory lap. Then she pulls out of Glastonbury last minute because she's on vocal rest per doctor's orders. Then she's supposed to open for K. Michelle. That gets canceled within the month because K. Michelle isn't available that fall. K. Michelle calls it a postponement because she's burnt out. Then Azealia gets on Twitter anyway, starts shading K. Michelle after fans ask about them collaborating in the future. K. Michelle calls her a poor lizard who needs money. Then in August, she's on Twitter saying that she can't release new music until March 2016 because of issues with her Prospect Park contract. At the time, she claims she's no longer with Prospect Park at all, which Prospect denies. Then she cancels her remaining solo US tour dates, which makes this, the 3rd major cancellation of the year? But the worst is yet to come. September 2015. Azalea's on a Delta flight from New York to LA, and when the plane lands, she apparently decides basic deplaning etiquette doesn't apply to her. Azealia is sitting in the 6th row and apparently decides she's gonna make a run for the door, but she gets held up at the 3rd row because there's this French couple getting their luggage out of the overhead bin. She tries to squeeze past them anyway, and the man puts his hand out to stop her. According to other passengers, Azealia spits at this man, punches him, and then starts pulling on his shirt. Now there's a whole tug of war over her luggage, and this is when someone starts recording. And in the video, you can see her arguing with the flight attendant who's holding her bag hostage. Then somebody else tries to intervene. She's trying to explain what's happening, then storms off, calling the flight attendant her absolute favorite word. You know the one. The French couple decides not to press charges. But then Azealia claims the man actually hit her in the face. An eyewitness comes forward and says that absolutely did not happen and she's lying. Not long after, she posts a photo of herself on another flight, joking about waiting for another flight attendant to try her. Obviously, nobody's here for this. Famously, Willem from Drag Race sees the whole Delta incident go down and decides he's gonna check out of the Azealia Banks experience. He tweets, "Well, the gays were all you had left, Azealia Banks, but after calling a Delta employee you won't even work a Pride. Nowhere, girl." And Azealia comes back with, "Well, I'm sure you have no career outside of standing on a float and drag during Pride." And Azealia doubles down with, "I have no ambitions to be part of the drag scene. I am not a hag. You can have it all to yourselves. I promise." Willem claps back by posting a screenshot of her #1 Billboard comedy album with the caption, "I may be booked, but I'm booked." But Azalea's not done. She then compares the LGBTQ community to the KKK. About a week or two after the Delta disaster, there's another another public incident, this time in LA at a club called Break Room 86. Azealia's reportedly acting disruptive and security asks her to leave. On the way out, she allegedly pulls the fire alarm and allegedly assaults a bouncer. There's security footage of this whole thing, so the LA City attorney actually files assault charges. But the case gets dismissed in 2016 because there wasn't enough evidence and the criminal complaint only listed Azealia, even though multiple people were involved in the incident. So lucky her. Just months later, December 2015, Azealia tags along with someone to a private party she's not invited to at Up and Down in Manhattan. She gets into it with another bouncer, assaults her, and ends the night arrested. She is then charged with misdemeanor assault, harassment, and disorderly conduct. Now, Azealia claims that 3 men came out of nowhere to forcibly escort her from this party that she was already allowed to remain at, and then allegedly a female security guard inserts herself into the scuffle and puts her into a headlock, and that is why she was bitten on the breast. But she's arraigned and released without bail and is due to show up to court at a later date. After this, she is in and out of that courthouse for the better part of 2 going on 3 years over these assault charges, birthing some of the best photos of her career, including ones of her lunging at paparazzi outside of the courthouse where she is standing trial for assaulting someone. So by 2016, the conditions for an Azealia Banks comeback are technically there. She spent most of 2015 stuck in that dispute with her label, a tale as old as time. But the expectation is that after she is cleared to release music again, she shows us what she's been doing with all that time. And that comeback ends up being Slazy, which drops in March 2016. And she had been teasing this for a while at this point, on top of her sophomore album and Fantasy 2. And the original idea was actually kind of interesting because she said it was supposed to be some sort of like Jay-Z tribute or remix project, very Blueprint inspired, but that gets scrapped over legal concerns, and according to Azealia, she was worried Beyonce would have it taken down the same way she had her Partition remix taken down. So what we get instead is just a mixtape of original songs and not even a hint of anything Jay-Z related. And once that happens, it just feels a little directionless to me. But the bigger issue is that a lot of what people actually liked about Azealia Banks isn't really here, and experimenting is fine, but the production rarely meets her at the level she can actually rap at, and the writing isn't doing anything particularly new either. And I would also venture to say that the songs don't really mesh well together, but it's a mixtape, so I'll give her that one. But if you cut Slazy down to its 4 or 5 best songs, you probably end up with a really solid EP. Along the Coast, The Big Big Beat, Used to Being Alone, those stand out because she's actually playing to her strengths, and The Big Big Beat especially is very well liked. But at this point, an Azealia Banks project needs to be more than pretty good, and pretty good is already a harder sell than it needs to be, especially when her nonsense is about to start overshadowing everything again. We're about to go into her second time threatening to leave Twitter, which obviously does not last very long because she's back almost immediately to go after Sarah Palin. So what happens is Azealia gets baited by a fake article from a satire site. The article has Sarah Palin quoted saying a bunch of racist nonsense, and Azealia responds by tweeting some of the most deranged things she's ever tweeted, believe it or not, suggesting Sarah Palin should be sexually assaulted by multiple black men as punishment, filmed and uploaded to WorldStar. She deletes the tweets once she realizes she got duped, but Sarah Palin posts some Facebook statement about working together to condemn misogyny and rape culture. Azealia apologizes but also calls out the microaggressions in Sarah's response. Of course, this apology does not last very long. After that, we get one of the most infamous Azealia Banks feuds with Zayn Malik. So Zayn drops the Like I Would video, and the thumbnail on the music video does look very similar to her Chasing Time visuals, so I'll give her that one thing. And Azealia clearly notices because she hops on Instagram with a little collage of his videos next to hers and captions it, "Damn, Zayn be mood boarding the out of me." Zayn starts tweeting, "No lies, I see you reaching but I don't care, and my ass too good for you. Mistake." At Zayn Malik, "Dude, I make better music than you. Simmer down with that fake white boy rebellion and that wannabe Bieber swag. LOL, you a bitch for even responding like that. Keep sucking that young Rapunzel, you hairy curry scented. I'ma start calling you Punjab, you dirty." And it just spirals from there into more ridiculous Islamophobic and homophobic remarks. Zayn responds asking her why she keeps saying nasty things about him. He wasn't even talking about her, so he claims. Then here comes Skai Jackson, number 1 Directioner, tweeting, "Azealia Banks needs to simmer down a little." Azealia replies, "And you need to grow some hips and start your menses. Stay in a child's place." This is where most adults would stop publicly arguing with a child. Skai then hits her with, "When a no-hip having 14-year-old has more class than you, worry about your career. Get one. LOL, your mom's been pimping you out to Disney since you were a little girl. Let's see what you end up like at 21. Bye." I had a career before Disney and I'm sure I will after. And I know I won't turn out like you, bitter and miserable. Fix your life. And I'm sure my mom did a way better job than yours did. You give black women a bad name. I'll be praying for you. Never heard of you before, never even seen you on TV. You aren't a star. You aren't a topic. You're a meme. A meme with 2.3 million Instagram followers. My memes are more relevant than you. Now that's sad. Now bye, Twitter troll. Instagram followers? LOL, your mom is prepping you to be an Instagram thought. You need to get your done and your tits done before you become a proper Instagram thought girly. Memes don't equal relevance, sweetheart. McDonald's has 1.3 million Instagram followers. Followers do not equal importance. You're just another little black girl who's going to be kicked off the Disney conveyor belt. Disney will find another more talented, more interesting black girl to replace you with. Poor you. Now that was corny. Go fix your edges before you come at me. Hashtag bye now. Hide behind your weave smutch. LOL, is your mom tweeting for you? Does your mom believe in the white man's Jesus too? Aw, hashtag that's cute. You got dissed by a One Directioner. How miserable can your life be? Now have several seats, Azealia stanks. LOL, your mom is obviously tweeting for you. This wasted conversation is helping your career. Bye, honey. No, it's only exciting your stage mom, which is who is tweeting for you. And your mom forced you into Disney because she failed in her life and you're going to end up depressed and addicted to. That's how these stories always go. Take your L like a champ. Your mom will be up in Disney's offices sucking for your next 4th lead role. Haha, we'll see who's laughing in September, Flatty Patty. Bye, Disney reject. Maybe you can play my maid, one TV on day. After this, Rinse FM in London drops her from their Born and Bred festival. The next day, Twitter suspends her account. So then she heads down to the Instagram to do what Azealia calls walking it back, which usually comes after the half apology. She's going to spin this narrative that this was all a larger political point. Her argument is that they are in the same racial category in this industry and he is moving like they're not. Being in One Direction, being adored by white girls, having proximity to whiteness, none of this moves him up the ladder the way he thinks it does. So this was her way of humbling him and reminding him that he is still a brown man from Bradford, and the machine will use him and discard him the same way it would her. So don't get too comfortable disrespecting the black girl. Because this is Azealia, you do have to squint past the mess to even hear what she's trying to say. But still, none of this excuses you being nasty, Islamophobic, homophobic, or terrorizing a 14-year-old on the internet. You don't get to play victim and a villain at the same time. She issues this statement to the world. I want to extend my sincerest apologies to the world. Employing racial, sexual slurs / stereotypes in attempts to make fun of or degrade another person or group is absolutely unacceptable. And sure enough, not long after that, she's back under Skai's photos commenting, LOL, Kylie doesn't even want to be in this photo with you. Then in September, she calls her a terrible actress who needs classes. So yeah. So at this stage, her career is in the toilet, everyone hates her, and the industry wants pretty much nothing to do with her at this point. So she does what she always does when she's finally backed into a corner. She walks it all back. So she drops this long, dramatic, open letter to Zayn, apologizing, calling her language derogatory, taking accountability, saying she hurt people, even calling him a gentleman. This whole thing reads as desperate. That's because it is. Then we get to the next biggest and most exhausting Azealia Banks incident, the Russell Crowe situation. You may know Russell Crowe from Gladiator or Les Mis or that episode of South Park where they had him fighting around the world. He's hosting this small dinner thing at a hotel in Beverly Hills with like 10 people, including RZA of the Wu-Tang Clan. Now, RZA and Russell have some sort of history. They worked together on RZA's directorial debut, The Man with the Iron Fist. They also starred alongside each other in 2 other films, and they have a fairly close business relationship. Now, Azealia Banks was not on the invite list, but she's there as RZA's guest. Why Azealia Banks of all people? I have no idea. But there were murmurs that he was looking to sign her, and she was supposed to star in his upcoming film Coco alongside Jill Scott, Common, and Earl from Scream Queens. Now, I don't even know if this was even a +1 type of event, but regardless, she shows up. And according to basically everyone in the room that night, she starts off the night by making fun of his music, calling it boring white man music. She gets into it with some woman who defends him. Russell tries to get between them. Azealia says Russell Crowe choked her, spat on her, and called her the N-word, and she filed a police report. Multiple guests, including RZA, say Azealia picked up a glass like she was about to throw it and threatened to stab the woman she was arguing with, and that's when Russell physically removed her.
What do I say? If I did something fucked up at my party and 9 witnesses were there, of course they're gonna side with me. Of course they're gonna lie for me, duh.
And whether Azalea's version is 100% true or not, I'm not putting anything past Russell Crowe. He likes to tussle. He threw a phone at a hotel worker once. He has a little reputation for being short-tempered. 2 guests denied the N-word and choking part though, but when it comes to spitting, one of them said he didn't spit on her. He spit in her direction. Okay, so he spit on her. And even if Azealia was being Azealia at this party, does that mean someone is justified in spitting at her? Then RZA gets on Facebook to give his side of the story. He reveals that while he was hesitant to go into business with Azealia Banks given her reputation, he gave her the benefit of the doubt, cast her in his movie, and she turned out to be really professional on set, generally easy to work with. Then she came to him asking for money, he gave it, asked her for a record deal, he called in a favor and got one on the table. He then bought her a plane ticket to LA, put her in a hotel, and he had already planned to spend time with his buddy Russell Crowe and just extended the invitation to her as a courtesy. And he pretty much has the same story as all the other witnesses that night.
No, because RZA doesn't have that much clout. He doesn't have that much clout in a room full of, you know, real, like, high-powered Hollywood white men. He doesn't.
So RZA just stood there?
Stood there.
And didn't say anything?
Like a chomp.
According to Azealia, everyone lied to protect Russell. The hotel sold the security footage, Lionsgate iced her out, and the Love Beats Rhymes premiere was basically ruined. She says no one checked on her, apologized, and RZA refused to back her up, so she pulled out of their deal. Of course, once RZA, the only other black person in the room, publicly broke with Azealia, the Peanut Gallery immediately decided that meant that she must have been lying or exaggerating, especially when it's Mr. Wu-Tang Clan RZA, because apparently if the conscious black man in the room isn't standing beside her, then there must not be anything there to stand beside. Which is funny because most of these black men never entertained Azealia Banks to begin with, maybe Q-Tip, that's about it. Earlier that same year, she got into it with Whale. Azealia says that black men in the industry don't protect or support her. Whale responds that nobody defends her because they're afraid she'll embarrass them online. And I'm sorry, but that explanation has always sounded a little ridiculous to me. These grown men are scared of Azealia Banks' tweets. She told y'all how she just stood next to T.I. and said nothing. She's not going to do anything. And mind you, these same men suddenly found plenty of courage when it was time to defend Iggy Azalea from her. Nobody seemed scared then. Same thing when Kanye needed defending around that same time. Everyone had something to say. And Whale himself clearly wasn't too scared to jump in the conversation and lecture her about why nobody defends her. And another funny part is Azealia is actually making a really good point underneath all of this about conditional support and how black women in the industry only get defended when they're respectable or easy enough to publicly stand beside. Whale never really engages with that point and just shifts the conversation into defending black men's feelings and why they don't want to deal with her. But this is also Azealia Banks, so it doesn't take long for her to get in her feelings and completely sabotage her own argument by calling Whale the hard ER, saying black men who think like him should be in jail, ranting about dating white men out of spite. And now Whale, who never actually addressed her original point in the first place, gets to look like the reasonable one while she's on the timeline calling him slurs. And this is why a lot of people struggle to fully receive Azealia as some voice on anti-blackness, because she doesn't actually have a coherent black politic. Not long before this, she was calling another black woman a tar baby, calling her the N-word, telling her to go pick cotton, recommending her White Nishes. White Nishes is an infamous skin bleaching cream sold by a woman named Denisha. She's a failed Nigerian pop star who went into selling a skin lightening line called White Nishes around 2014. She insisted it was just for dark spots, not skin bleaching. Meanwhile, the promo photos are literally before and afters of her egregiously lightened skin. Black China even had a little collab with her at one point. And then by 2016, Azealia starts promoting White Nishes too, with the same claim that it's just for dark spots and evening out her skin tone. Around that time, she's posting a bunch of photos where she looks noticeably lighter.
Everybody's like, you know, well, how do you hate, you know, white supremacy yet you date white men, or how do you preach black rights yet you bleach your skin? And it's just like, you know, like, or how do you like preach black rights and you say the N-word and stuff like that? It's just like, I'm really starting to believe that there are just certain things that aren't supposed to reconcile. You know, they're not supposed to correlate. They aren't supposed to, and they're supposed to juxtapose, and that is supposed to be like the beauty of, or just, I don't know, the paradox that is being black in 2016. I don't know.
Then the white niches page posts her using the product. Not long after that, she's doing sponsored posts. And when people drag her, she says there's no difference between bleaching your skin, getting a nose job, or wearing a weave. Not long after this, she decides to fully put on the red hat and endorse Donald Trump, which honestly should not have been a shock to anyone by 2016. We already knew where she stood. First it was she kind of agreed with his immigration stance, but then she backpedals and says she wasn't actually supporting him. She was just saying that Black Americans should get reparations before focusing on immigrants. And as selfish as her reasoning may be, this is as far as she's willing to go in supporting anything he says, as far as we know, especially since we already know she is not the biggest Donald Trump fan, and as fickle as she might be, she had just gone viral months prior for comparing him to Hitler on the cover of Time magazine, and she said he had a hangnail for a penis, but she still gets a lot of backlash for this. Then she gets more pushback and suddenly it's not that anymore. Now it's a social experiment. She was just presenting an abstract view, which would make sense if she then came back with an actual clarified position. But then she just disappears from that specific conversation. Then a few months later, she pops back up with her whole chest saying that she's voting red. Her reasoning being Trump is the only one with the balls to bust up big business, and America needs an oppressed underclass to function, and that America is evil and Trump is evil, and therefore he is exactly what America needs and deserves. In her mind, this is probably some form of accelerationist politics, when a lot of it really is just pocketbook politics. Very much gas prices are too high, very lower my taxes, and somehow she convinces herself that this man would care more about reparative justice than Hillary, which neither of them were likely to do. A few months later, she even gets on Periscope to walk people through Trump's tax plan, and at one point she literally asks people to disregard the racism and bigotry so they can focus on his tax policy. And of course she tries to dress it up in Black Power language, throws in a Dred Scott reference, talks about the Democratic Party's history of covert racism, the Clintons' political track record, the 1994 crime bill, and like a lot of her analysis is not a new viewpoint. People had been saying this for decades, but it's a little harder to take her seriously at all when she somehow lands on Trump being the solution to all our problems. It doesn't take long until Access Hollywood releases that tape of him bragging about assaulting women for her to realize endorsing him was a mistake. And even then, she's mostly walking it back because of women's rights backlash. But more than anything, she says she regrets mixing music and politics. But once the election actually happens, she's obviously singing a very different tune. She is elated because her hero has officially beat the media, and she cannot believe it. With all the liberal celebrities, Hillary endorsements, and press surrounding him, he has won, and she couldn't be prouder. And then she apologizes for ever doubting him, and this might be the most vindicated she's ever felt in her entire life. And this is just all very ridiculous. This is happening concurrent with Kanye also aligning himself with Trump, and the conversation around Azealia is very similar. You basically had two camps. One camp saying this is disgusting and crosses a line even for Azealia Banks, and then you have the other camp saying none of this woman is real and it's all a show because people simply do not care enough about her music to pay attention otherwise. Now, I think both of these positions are problematic in their own way, but I can see how people land on the second one because everything surrounding this is just a series of outlandish nonsense. December 2016 gave us the chicken closet. She posted a bunch of videos on Instagram scrubbing down the interior of a closet that was caked in dried blood, feathers, and things I could not even name. While doing so, she casually informs the audience that she had been sacrificing chickens in that closet for 3 years as part of her brujeria practice, this being some form of Latin folk magic / witchcraft. Now, she's been publicly vocal about her practicings. She even claimed to have hexed Iggy Azealia, so it's not like this came out of nowhere, but this was a lot for people, including PETA, who issued a statement against her, as well as Sia, which prompts Azealia to post and delete a strongly worded response. I'm going to go ahead and assume that this and the original chicken video were scrubbed from her page because she was scared to have her Instagram snatched as well. Right now, all she has is Facebook and Instagram, really. And there are rumblings in the jungle that her Facebook was banned in early 2017 after she decided to pick a fight with the nation of Brazil, called them third world freaks, typing in broken English from their favelas. And of course, the Brazilians come for her. Though we don't know the exact reason this sudden ban occurred, we can all assume it's because Azealia had been posting non-stop nonsense for months. Weeks before this, she was out here saying that she wanted to perform at Trump's inauguration while the Women's March was being organized, which she was also very against. She eventually gets the Facebook restored, but in the meantime, she crawls right back to her favorite little hobby, dragging Rihanna. And she has an interesting relationship with Rihanna, similar to Beyonce and Nicki. Azealia was allegedly supposed to be featured on Anti, and she allegedly got drunk and bragged in a club about being on Rihanna's album, and then the song doesn't make the final cut. So she does what she always does when a collab doesn't work in her favor, leaks a snippet and starts running her mouth. Then she tells this whole story about going to Rihanna's house in Malibu to write for her. According to Azealia, Rihanna stays upstairs partying while Azealia is downstairs with 5 strangers, 2 beers, a can of Coke, a jar of peanuts, and no chairs, slaving away. And she'd gone on Twitter repeatedly over the years to critique Rihanna's artistry and her work ethic and calling her lazy, and the same thing she said about Beyonce. But fast forward a little bit to January 2017, Donald Trump has just signed an executive order halting refugee entry and banning those from several predominantly Muslim countries. And Rihanna takes to Twitter and calls the man an immoral pig. Now, Azealia Banks reminds us all that Rihanna is not an American citizen and therefore cannot vote, and apparently is not allowed to have an opinion on American politics. She defends the travel ban, declares that America needs to finish the war it started, and then says that she didn't sign up for any of this extra shit and refuses to involve herself in any matters that don't concern African American people. So pass her a chicken and leave her the fuck alone. So Rihanna posts a photo with the caption, "The face you make when you an immigrant," and then she hashtagged "stay away from the chickens" and "I heart nuggets" and "save our hens." Azealia responds by saying Rihanna grew up poor, is spreading her legs to the moon for songs and accuses her of smoking crystal meth, and that's why she can't perform. Rihanna posts another photo captioned, "The face you make when you screaming in an empty room." She also likes a comment that says, "That face you make when you get scrapped from an album." To which Azealia responds, "You're clearly listening and responding to each and every post. These pop stars love me." A Rihanna fan photoshops Azalea's face onto a small child chasing a chicken. Rihanna comments, "All them nuggets gone to waste." Then the Navy floods Azalea's comments with chicken emojis. Azealia posts a video begging Rihanna to read some books, and she'll gladly make Rihanna some chicken nuggets. Then leaks what she claims is Rihanna's phone number with the caption, "Bombs away." Rihanna responds by posting screenshots of Azalea's text, in which Azealia tells her, "I don't have to do anything to you, miss. Beyonce is already working heavy on you. Everything to stop and think that's why you have a sex addiction? LOL, girly. Best of luck." Rihanna captions the screenshots, "Weirdos." And then Rihanna makes Azalea's phone number her profile picture. Okay, so after all of this, Azealia is supposed to be showing up to court for that 2015 incident where she bit that security guard. On March 6, 2017, Azealia sends her attorney into a Manhattan courtroom with a handwritten note saying that she can appear in court tomorrow if the court needs it. Her attorney stands before a judge and explains that Azealia thought the court date was a whole 2 days later and was in France for Fashion Week, with meetings and social gatherings that simply would not allow her to arrange a flight. The judge then issued a bench warrant for her arrest. She did not do any time for missing the court date, and the trial gets pushed to March 15th, and they come in ready. They dragged out the Russell Crowe incident. They reached all the way back to 2009 when she pleaded guilty to attacking her own sister with a box cutter. And this all ends in her taking a plea deal. She pleads guilty to 3rd-degree assault for no jail time, mandatory anger management, continued mental health treatment, a full order of protection, and she needed to stay out of trouble entirely. If she kept her nose clean, the conviction would be reduced to a disorderly conduct, but if she violated any of these terms, she was looking at up to a year in jail. For like 5 minutes, it seems like the anger management classes might actually be doing something. Azealia randomly tweets that she wants to collaborate with Iggy Azalea, of all people. Iggy responds, and a few weeks later, she announces Azealia is going to be on her next album. Iggy's fans threw a whole streaming party and celebration. Azealia released a kumbaya statement about how they were both so young and dumb during their beef and had buried the hatchet. And then 2 months passed by. She announced the collab was dead because of label issues, and Iggy is back on her list. But she quickly shifts her itch for female rap beef to 2 other non-white female rappers, starting with Cardi B. Now mind you, just a few months prior, Azealia was on Beyonce's internet speaking very kindly about Cardi. She was singing her praises. Oh, she deserved the freshman list. Very warm, very supportive. Then fast forward, Bodak Yellow goes #1, and suddenly Cardi is the poor man's Nicki Minaj.
We know the from Harlem who wrote the song. The nigga's name is Poe. He's friends with your boyfriend from jail, and you they all call you a smart and say your is purple. Girl, everybody in the hood already said that you for raps. Like, come on, you are the poor man's Nicki Minaj at this point, you know? Like, I thought you were gonna do something bow, maybe some balcatron, maybe some reggaeton, something original, but you the poor man's Nicki Minaj. Like, Cardi, congrats on your #1, you know? Like, just like you said, like a bum from the Bronx like you. It's great that you made it, you know? I'm sure it inspires a lot of other bum, but like, you know, you suck for raps, you know? You for raps. They gassed you like you was that girl, but you're not that girl, you know? You're like a toy. You're like some little like smut that gonna stick their in. You're gonna have your moment now and then you're gonna be gone. Enjoy it.
Then Cardi posts the infamous video of Azealia in the club, happily dancing and rapping every single word of Bodak Yellow, captioning it. One of the reasons Bodak Yellow went #1, cause even the haters love it. Azealia then accuses Cardi of sleeping for raps and calls her an Audubon Avenue smut. And because Cardi had become the new threat, Azealia begins walking back the years of Nicki Minaj shade and repositioning herself as pro Nicki. Like I've said before, Azealia has a long-standing, almost one-sided beef with what was the big three. As we know, one minute she's reminding us she's better than Nicki, making little comments about her sweeping the BET female rap category. Then the next minute she's defending her against Iggy Azalea. At some point it looked like they actually might collaborate. Azealia teased an Ice Princess remix with Rick Ross and hinted at another feature, while Nicki was liking comments that made it seem like something was in the works. That goes nowhere. Then the Madame Tussauds Las Vegas revealed the Nicki wax figure modeled after the Anaconda video where she's on all fours, and Azealia is not a fan of it despite Nicki calling it iconic. She was basically saying the museum had done her dirty and predicts that people are going to treat the figure in a sexualized, disrespectful way. And that's exactly what ends up happening. Visitors start taking inappropriate photos with the figure and one goes viral. The museum apologizes and adjusts the exhibit. Then come the 2015 VMAs debacle between Nicki, Taylor Swift, and Miley Cyrus. So 2015 VMAs nominations drop, Bad Blood is up for a video of the year and goes on to win. But Anaconda, a video that quite literally was inescapable, is not even in the category, leading Nicki to tweet about how videos celebrating certain body types get rewarded. Taylor gets defensive, tweets back, gets dragged, and apologizes. Then they're on stage smiling like none of this ever occurred. Miley involves herself by basically tone policing. And I don't fully disagree with Miley's entire point about Nicki coming from a self-interested place, but right message, wrong messenger. At first, Azealia Banks looks like she's standing 10 toes with Nicki. When the nominations dropped, she starts talking about how her own work is overlooked, how she'll never get her due because she's an outspoken black woman. But then the VMAs happen and she wakes up the next day like, actually, all of you are basic. She calls Nicki, Taylor, Miley, everybody mediocre, saying the whole thing is a mediocrity pageant and a swagger jacking contest. Then she addresses Nicki's comments about Miley and says, don't suddenly make this Miley situation about race when you were very quiet about appropriation before. Don't complain about skinny women when your body is enhanced. And where is this passion when it comes to standing up for other female rappers? Then things really go left after Nicki Minaj releases a game with the character seemingly throwing shade at Azealia. This was one of those mid-2010s celebrity career sim apps in the Kim Kardashian Hollywood / Britney Spears American Dream lane. The game apparently included a character named Fantasea who has some song or album described as sounding like a mermaid would sound like, and has a really loud, obnoxious screech that goes on for hours. Given Fantasea the mermaid aesthetic and her general belief that everyone on Earth was stealing from her, she took it as shade and goes down to the Facebook. She says, Nicki girl, now listen, don't start throwing shade because you missed Safari and know that I've actually made a banger with him, referring to the collaboration she had already previewed with Nicki's ex. Then she tells her to slim down a bit, especially in the neck and arms, decrease the butt a bit, stop wearing spandex as an outfit, then tells her to image search Gaga 2011 and pick that back up because this so-called real Nicki is less interesting than Gaga knockoff Nicki. But once the Cardi B of it all occurs, she backpedals once again. Azealia slides into her DMs with a full apology. She tells her that she's sorry for the caddy she said over the years, praises her artistry and her mind, and basically tries to reset the relationship going forward. And you know, Nicki sends her praises back and forgives her. And this is happening conveniently just months after Remy Ma's Sheether and Nicki's No Frauds response. So obviously, Azealia also turns on Remy Ma. In December 2017, Remy tells Ebro in the Morning that when she came home from prison, it was nothing and tumbleweeds as far as female rappers were concerned. Azealia heads to Instagram and says that Nicki is still miles more important than Remy, calls Remy's fixation on Nicki very unhealthy, calls her a confused Nicki Minaj stan, an auntie, a reality TV star, and says she's no longer counts in the real female rap conversation. And then Remy Ma posts alleged text from Azealia talking about wanting to be on Love and Hip Hop, money issues, depression, dragging Nicki multiple times, which should surprise absolutely no one, given that while her Twitter was private, she had been shading her and appearing to be on Remy's side all along. And the most egregious text in this thread is Azealia discussing wanting labiaplasty/vaginal rejuvenation. Wendy Williams covers it on Hot Topics and implies that now people understand how Azealia gets her money because she is 26, has no kids, and is talking about a vaginal rejuvenation, widely read as Wendy suggesting X-rated work. Azealia says Wendy accused her of prostitution, calls it bullying, says she's in tears over how acceptable it has become to say vile things about her publicly. She then threatens Remy, who is on parole, with legal action. So after spending the tail end of 2017 being publicly embarrassed and reduced to Wendy Williams fodder, Azealia comes into 2018 attempting to put the focus back on the music. She had already made a couple attempts last year with Chi Chi and a commercial reissue of Slay Z under her own Chaos and Glory imprint. Those did not get much love, but in 2018 she announces an Entertainment One deal, and on April 6, 2018 she drops Anna Wintour, the first formal single released from what would become Fantasy 2. And where does she go to promote this new single? The Breakfast Club. It should not surprise you in the slightest that going into this interview, Azealia Banks did not have the best relationship with the Breakfast Club. Charlemagne has given her Donkey of the Day at least 2 times prior to this. They have had many a Twitter back and forth, and she had just gone at him and Joe Budden not that long ago over Nicki Minaj. But little did we know, they have reconciled and have actually been texting for like 3 years behind the scenes before she officially agreed to go on. You may know this interview for...
What about interns here? She said that you make music for gays.
I do.
I'm not the intern. She looked at me like...
What's wrong with that?
Nothing. Nothing's wrong with it.
So?
No, I'm saying now. I mean, it's not specifically for that audience. You just make music, right?
I guess.
Much like the Hot 97 interview 4 years ago, there are so many gems here. Obviously, the occasion is to promote new music. She wants to release the next Fantasy album in July, and she now has the label funding to get her foot back in the door. And you know, she's working on everything that led to her fall from grace. She keeps saying that she's not the same person anymore. She's in therapy now. She's calmer. She's not as tense as she used to be. But she still believes that she was blackballed from the industry, and she proceeds to walk us through all of her fairly recent offenses. First thing she brings up is 2016 when she supported Donald Trump, and she literally says that she did it for a tax break, and then she says she didn't even vote. And now she's like, he's entertaining but not a serious president. Then we get into the Russell Crowe situation, which is the second big reason she gives for why things went left for her, and she is still very clearly upset about that. She calls RZA a clown, starts accusing him of being on coke, and what she's really mad about is that he spoke publicly instead of staying quiet and promoting their movie that flopped and didn't even get a proper soundtrack due to all of this. And in her mind, if he had just said nothing, they could have at least still made money. Like, they both took hits from this situation and lost opportunities, and Russell Crowe just got to move on. And she says RZA should only call her if he has money for her, and Russell Crowe shouldn't call her at all. Then the last thing, and the most recent issue, is Cardi B. So Azealia calls Cardi an illiterate, untalented rat. When they ask why she chose those words, she tries to turn it into something bigger. She brings up Lemonade and says that this was the high point for black women, like intelligent, nuanced, and everything after that has just been a downgraded caricature of black women. And Cardi is the main example of that. Mind you, this same woman, when Lemonade first came out, she called it the antithesis of feminism, said Beyonce was using dark-skinned girls as props, and that B perpetuated sad black female sufferance. And even Cardi calls this out. She heads over to the shade room and comments, Beyonce? Wasn't Beyonce the same woman she was talking shit about? I'm from the hood. I speak how I speak. I am how I am. I did not choose to be famous. People chose me. I never asked to be a role model. This is coming from a woman that bleached her skin but wants to advocate. Goodbye. I'm not apologizing or killing myself because of who I am. Azealia posts a picture of Cardi with no makeup on, says she looks like a big toe, starts questioning her identity, saying she only started identifying as black once she got into hip hop, then goes on Twitter calling her a bird and a hood booger and dragging her relationship, calling her an Offset situation a real life Maury episode. Cardi responds again and basically says Azealia can't claim to speak for black women while constantly tearing black women down, says she can read and write in 2 languages so she's not illiterate, and explains that she has a Hispanic father father and a Caribbean mother, and that she's never hidden that. Then Cardi's publicist jumps in and makes it 10 times worse by posting that black people are the real racists, and it just becomes so overwhelming that Cardi deactivates her Instagram and Twitter, and she probably needed to be offline anyway. This is also around the same time that she gets into that argument outside of the Louis Vuitton store, and like she's pregnant during all of this, and I still don't really get why she even cares about what Azealia Banks has to say at this point. But yeah. Okay, so the next stop on what is supposed to be Azalea's big comeback to music is her beef with RuPaul. So she's accusing RuPaul of ripping off Big Big Beat for his song Call Me Mother, and this is not a baseless claim because like the same beat, similar melody, similar flow, the same general Azealia formula of rapping over house music. Now, do I think RuPaul herself was in the studio personally Frankensteining beats? Absolutely not. I'm not even sure Ru had a large part in the making of this song, but they are damn near the same song. Azealia was on Twitter like she personally snatched it off the servers herself, and then the Drag Race people start weighing in, and she was already beefing with Willem and Candy Muse. Now Bob, Shea, and Monet are coming for her, and Shea and her were actually pretty cool at one point. They had literally teased a collab back in 2017, like a year ago. But then Shea makes one little shady tweet about Call Me Mother being back on Spotify, and Azealia says, "You better enjoy it. That's as close to Azealia Banks as you will ever get." And then she sees with her own eyes that the song is there and gets back on Twitter like, okay, now this is scum. Now it's all y'all carry, crack, Drag Race. Y'all all banned now. And then Monet Exchange says she will never perform her Azealia mix ever again, and Azealia tells her that her crotch is rotting and fermenting under the sour mildew girdle, and right on cue, Twitter suspends her. Luckily for Azealia, this for the most part stays in a pretty small Twitter bubble, but unlucky for her, she is about to make a lot more noise the very next one with her Wild 'N Out appearance. Wild 'N Out, as you may know, is Nick Cannon's improv roasting show. Been running for I don't even know how long at this point. There's an ensemble cast, notably DC Young Fly, B. Simone, Funny Mike, Jason Lee, Timothy De La Ghetto, Just Hilarious, and Matt Rife were also on the show at one point, so I'm sure you could guess what kind of environment this was. But it's supposed to be all in good fun, playing the dozens, joshing, you know. And you would think for someone who drags people on the internet every single day completely for free, that this would be the perfect setting for Miss Azealia Banks, you would think. After the episode films, Azealia runs to Instagram to announce that she was left in tears. Production allegedly told her to prepare nothing and that she would not be doing any of their little games, and she was only there to perform her song and go. But then they made her do the games anyway. She says there were a ton of pre-planned colorist jokes that some little scrawny black Atlanta twink, DC Young Fly, was specifically prepared for her, that someone darker than her, DC Young Fly, started calling her ugly and being colorist, and then she drops a paragraph long read on the entire cast, calling them disgustingly basic, local cattle call urban pseudo-comedic fat because you sit in a chair all day, greasy soul food induced south of the Mason-Dixon, post-Jim Crow, post-traumatic slave disorder, self-esteemless, ward of the state clowns. Nick Cannon responds with, "Don't you hate when you create your own storms but forget your umbrella? We are praying for you, queen."
And Nick Cannon, you don't have to pray for me. Pray for your immune system, okay? You don't have to pray for me.
Wendy Williams covers the story, and Azealia responds by saying she hopes Wendy has another stroke on air and finally drops dead. She says she held back from what she really wanted to say because she knew if she snapped the way she wanted to, she'd never be booked on TV again. And she says the episode literally messed up the whole rollout that she had planned. Once the episode aired, people were even less on Azalea's side than they were before. For the So Fly segment, they go ahead and rename it So Petty, specifically for Azealia Banks. It starts out fine. There's a little joke about her wearing church usher gloves so Nick's rap skills won't rub off on her. Everybody's laughing, and then DC Young Fly opens his mouth. He says that Nick Cannon couldn't get Cardi B, so he settled for Azealia Banks' ugly. And everyone just thinks this is the funniest thing ever. Young Fly is dragging it. Azealia calls him colorist and anti-black. Even someone on her team is like, that's not fair. Because knockoff Travis Scott is standing right there in the back. Why does Azealia Banks have to be ugly? And when it was time for DC Young Fly to come after Lil Yachty, there was no ugly or coming out of his mouth.
Man, in this music game, yeah, you got swag. I would say I with your music, but April Fool's already passed.
And then when you think that they're about to actually defend her, her own team was throwing her under the bus with misogynistic jokes, and so then she actually has to defend herself now, and she does not let DC Young Fly go. She tells him to enjoy his lap around the theater because he won't be booking anything else. Says he lives in a $750 a month apartment, calls him broke, says he looks like the...
You know the boy that was like gay, and then he came back out and was like, oh,
I don't like men's no more.
yeah, he was like, don't he look just like that kid?
And DC Young Fly keeps going, making racist jokes, says she only has the metal and no wire, and the audience is just eating it up. And Azealia Banks is just standing there, gagged. And it's even worse because, unpopular opinion, but DC Young Fly is like class clown, funny at best. Surely Azealia Banks has a good comeback. Then when she can finally get her lick back, now it's leave DC Young Fly alone.
Hey, you gotta stop, man. You gotta stop. Leave that alone.
It is not her finest hour. 4 out of 10 Azealia Banks experience. At the end of the night, she performs Anna Wintour, and it does not go well. People online clowned her for it. Also claimed that she was giving them the death stare during her performance, probably because they're fake voguing in the back. And one thing we know about Azealia Banks is that we will never hear the end of anything. She brings it up constantly for years.
I'm sorry, you're not gonna bring me out of my element to bring me to dusty Atlanta to sit in front of some coon for them to sit here and call me ugly while they got this flatty patty Queen Herbie reject looking trying to say talking about Wakanda reject. Like, what the fuck is going on? I'm sorry, it's 2018. Like, the ugly black girl jokes, it's like, it's inappropriate. What part of society is telling these that they can deal with me like this, You would never be able to bring Meghan Trainor on this show and call her fat. Why? Because there would be some other white nigga to cut your check off. Don't try to make fun of me because you can do it for free, my nigga. Bitch, y'all want me up there to humiliate me in front of a bunch of mediocre light-skinned women with no resume, Y'all niggas have half a resume too. But if I was really up there and I was like, all right, y'all niggas all in Atlanta, y'all probably DL. I'm sorry, there was not one dark-skinned woman on that stage, and the y'all had in there were not fly. Not these flat tummies, lollipop, booty popping, waist training, free pack of weave, mediocre Instagram. You could have went for flop. You could have been this. Oh, you had too much weave. Oh, you did this. Oh, you never had a hit. Oh, but you're really just calling me ugly the whole time. And you got these mediocre, nice, good. No, y'all niggas must really be down here in the warehouses sniffing meth and having too much sex. Y'all niggas out of your minds are out of your cotton picking minds. I'm sorry, you're not gonna bring a black woman up here on this stage to humiliate her while this no rapping, no resume as flatty patty white stands there and laughs. The crazy shit, it was Little Yachty was on the show. Why y'all wasn't joking on Little Yachty? Every joke was a zillion thing. It was mad people on the stage. Y'all not joking on Little Yachty. It's y'all not gonna play on the black nigga time, but y'all gonna play on the black girl time. Y'all niggas is full of shit.
May 31st, 2023, Miss Jackie O, a former Wild 'N Out cast member and DC Young Fly's long-term partner and mother of his 3 children, passed away at 32 years old from complications following a cosmetic surgery procedure. And Azealia Banks takes this as an opportunity to gloat on her Instagram story and implies the death is ironic because Jackie passed at 32 exactly on Azalea's 32nd birthday in Miami, which is where Azealia was living at the time. In her mind, the universe arranged for this woman to die as a gift to her. But we know this woman is not right in the head and she's going to hell, and she's rightfully dragged for this. Then again, when she brought it up this year. If you had actually been paying attention to Azealia Banks' socials at the time, you'd know that she wasn't just beefing with the entire cast of Wild 'N Out, she was also going after Grimes and Elon Musk. At this point, Azealia Banks and Elon Musk are not two people you would ever put in the same sentence. That is until he starts dating Grimes. Azealia had actually been vocal about wanting to work with Grimes as early as 2012, and they had been kind of in the same circles as each other for a while now. So they finally agreed to collaborate on Azalea's forever delayed sophomore album, and Grimes agrees to fly to New York to record it. Then things are kind of up in the air for a while and we don't hear much about it. Then on July 30th, Grimes tweets saying, yes, the collab is still happening. Azealia just needs to come to LA to finish it. So Azealia goes, okay, bet, and hops on a plane to LAX. Now, this is where things get a little interesting because according to Azealia, Grimes invited her to stay at her new man Elon Musk's house so they could finish the sessions, and she showed up at Elon's house crack of dawn on a Friday, and immediately the vibes are off. She told Business Insider that Elon seemed anxious and distracted all weekend, pacing around, scrambling, just the energy was not right. Tesla was getting dragged through the mud in the press, and Elon had just tweeted that he was considering taking Tesla private at $420 a share, and nobody knew if he was being serious or if that was a weed joke, but if he was serious, that could be seen as market manipulation, which would make it illegal. And then the same day Azealia arrives, Grimes and Elon dip to Las Vegas for DEF CON, which is some hacker conference, and according to everybody involved, Azealia did not see either one of them for the entire rest of the weekend. In her words, they bring me out there on this premise that we would hang and make music, but his dumb kept tweeting and tucked it in between his cheeks once hit the fan. By Sunday night, August 12th, she's on IG like, I have been in Elon Musk's house alone for days, waiting for Grimes to show up and start these sessions. I don't even know when she's coming back. I'll give it one more day, then I'm going home. Then she says staying in Elon's house has been like a real life episode of Get Out, and it's like, you would think she was being held at gunpoint. Why are you waiting around in these people's empty house for a 3-day weekend? When she finally does leave, she says, LOL, I waited around all weekend while Grimes coddled her boyfriend for being too stupid to know not to go on Twitter while on acid. Then she ghosted me and tried to book me a first-class flight through Rock Nation, like she's big enough to send me out of LA. Ha. Now, Elon's response to all of this is to tell a Gizmodo reporter that he had never met Azealia Banks and had never communicated with her, but also he did not deny that she was staying at one of his properties. And Azealia comes back with receipts, and then the New York Times asks him about it, and he finally admits, okay, yes, he did technically see Azealia Banks from like 30 feet away for 2 seconds while she was leaving, and he, quote, didn't even register who she was. She then goes on this long rant about how his family's wealth is rooted in emerald and ore mines in South Africa during apartheid. Azealia starts posting these cryptic messages saying Elon is demanding she return her phone and that his lawyer has her device and is deleting evidence, and she's saying she's going to call the police and she's in tears, and it is this whole thing. And then she posts screenshots of her text with Grimes, and the texts include Grimes telling her private information about Elon that we really did not need to know. Grimes talking about Russian operatives wanting Elon dead. Grimes explaining the real story behind the funding secured tweet, and then at some point they start body shaming each other and Grimes calls her a narc. Just weird. Fast forward a few weeks, and now she's fighting with Lana Del Rey. And this is unfortunate because, you know, these girls had something. Azealia had publicly defended Lana before. She gave her flowers. Publicly, they had complimented each other. They took photos together. They co-signed each other. They even did a remix for Blue Jeans. And then 2016 happened, and I think we all know what 2016 was for Azealia Banks. And after all of that, she became one of those people where the optics of defending her were not worth it at all. And I think a lot of people made the choice to just stay quiet. And I think that rubbed Azealia the wrong way. She even says so herself. So fast forward to 2018, and Kanye had just done SNL and showed up in his MAGA hat and gave a pro-Trump speech. And Lana goes on his Instagram and comments that Trump becoming president was a loss for the country and Kanye supporting him was a loss for the culture. And Azealia saw that comment and she came at Lana for selective outrage and said this energy would hit different if Lana had that same smoke for other people, specifically A$AP Rocky, who she accuses of assaulting women. And she accused Lana of using Kanye's name for what she called vapid attempts to seem politically aware and called it a typical white woman move to perform allyship. And then she dragged in the witchcraft thing because Lana had previously called some witches to put a spell on Trump or something, and Azealia called it bootleg witchcraft. Lana Del Rey responds days later, telling Azealia, you know the addy, pull up anytime, say it to my face, but if I were you, I wouldn't. And then she followed that up with, I won't not you the up, period. Why is she talking like this? And then she said Azealia could have been the greatest female rapper alive, but she blew it. Azealia then starts making fun of Lana's weight, and then Lana said that she would send Azealia her surgeon's number and a good psychiatrist she knows in LA. Azealia gets Kanye's support in all of this, if that matters. And then she starts talking to her lawyer about suing Lana for the pull-up tweet, and Lana responds to that by saying, tell him it's a promise, not a threat. And then Azealia tweeted about this for 40 days and 40 nights, and she also at some point threatened Lana with arson. During her little A$AP Rocky rant, someone decides to gotcha Azealia Banks and reminds her that she worked with Dr. Luke. So in 2014, Kesha sues Dr. Luke in civil court, alleging that he sexually assaulted and emotionally abused her over the course of their working relationship, and she also wanted out of their recording contract that kept her tied to him. And Dr. Luke responds by filing his own lawsuit, accusing her of extorting him. And Azealia came out in support of Dr. Luke and said that this was just another example of a white woman leaning into her inherent victimhood to manipulate her way through a situation. And she also said that Kesha had never shown up for any black woman going through something, so she was not going to show up for Kesha. And a lot of people pointed to the Russell Crowe situation where Azealia alleged that she had been assaulted and multiple witnesses contradicted her version of events. Then she also came out about being sexually assaulted earlier this year, and she did not pursue legal action, and so people were asking if that meant that she was lying. And this is not the last time she pulled something like this either, because she has also come out against abuse claims that AOC has made and abuse claims that FKA Twigs has made. Then we find out later that part of why she even defended Dr. Luke was because she thought aligning herself with him could get her a deal with his record label. Now, you're probably wondering why Azealia was even trying to make a move to another label in the middle of what was supposed to be a promising deal with E1. Well, she separates from E1 in 2019 and she is independent again for what feels like the 15th time. And then she threatens to quit rap because her music is just too good for 3/4 of the public and we don't deserve her. Whatever quitting means to her doesn't last very long, because not even 3 months later, on 9/11, she drops the 2019 sequel to Young Rapunzel. And after listening to it, it's not her best work. The concept is supposed to be hard techno, very experimental. It's set in China in year 3030, and it was inspired by some Yeezy design she claims Kanye stole from her. But the execution of this project just falls flat. A lot of the criticisms being that the raps are lazy and the production is terrible, and that the worst thing about it is that the mixing and mastering is also god-awful. And production quality is something that comes up with everything she releases. Post Anna Wintour and Dr. Luke produced Treasure Island. Like, there's clearly no team around her because the output is just not the same. And we know she is not the best at keeping business relationships. Like, back in 2018, she was working on a holiday EP and she is scrambling for a sound engineer, and Joe Budden helped get her some engineer, and then she turns around and complains that Joe Budden's can't botch the mix and master. And then she has more drama with other producers after that, so she just starts doing a lot of it herself. And I think that is honestly the root of the sound quality issues. There was also this narrative that she couldn't afford to get a good sound team because at the time her money was looking a little funny. Like, how is Azealia Banks making her money at this point? She hasn't released an album in years. She was just sued for credit card debt, and the streets are saying that she doesn't even ship out the soaps people keep buying from her. And then in 2020, she goes on Instagram and says her old label boss basically robbed her on Broke with Expensive Taste. She claims the album made around $1.5 million and she only saw 15,000 of that, and that expenses were inflated and she never got proper accounting. And she says she has the masters and is going to press physical copies, sell them herself, and obviously that plan doesn't go through, and he countersues and they end up in court in 2023. And at this point, nobody knows what the hell is actually going on with Azealia and her music. Every collaboration she plans on doing this year either gets canceled, turns into beef, or both. She was supposed to work with Poppy, then she doesn't show up. Then in March 2019, Kim Petras teases that she has an Azealia collab coming and says Azalea's verse is great, but then a week later, Azealia says she is canceling it because it won't help her brand, as she has been the gay hip-hop spokesperson for too long with very little reward. And then a week after that, she doubles back and says the cancellation was actually part of a manic episode and it's back on. So she writes and records her verse, and obviously nothing comes of it. The song gets shelved, and she eventually just leaks a 10-minute studio session recording of her verse to SoundCloud herself. And one thing that nobody really talks about when it comes to this collab with Kim Petras is that Doja Cat was also originally supposed to be on this song too, which is something that only Azealia has really acknowledged, but it is actually plausible because Kim and Doja were both connected to Dr. Luke, unfortunately. And I want to keep this brief, but she does go on to call Kim fat and makes comments about her jaw and her hormones, and then she turns on Doja after Doja gets caught in those racial chat rooms. And one day she just gets on live watching the Juicy video and starts body shaming her and calling her disgusting and mocking her cellulite. And then like a year later, she invites Doja to work with her again after Doja was listening to some of her songs on Instagram Live, just to go right back to talking about her again.
Azealia Banks, Nicki Minaj, Azealia Banks, Cardi B. You have all these who are doing more than what do. And we're all being just pit against each other.
Bam, bam. I would go on like heavy Azealia Banks music video and performance binges.
Sometime around the demise of this Kim Petras song, Azealia announces not one, but 2 new singles coming, and one of them is with Abra on a song called Centella, and the other one is with Slater called New Victim as part of her Young Rapunzel Part 2 mixtape. And we actually see photos of them together seemingly recording or just hanging out, and Azealia was commenting on Slater's posts and they followed each other. etc. But then in September 2019, Slater tells Paper Magazine that this song is no longer happening. A month later, someone asks Azealia, you know, what happened to the Slater song? And Azealia responds that Slater used her for free glam, only took selfies with her for clout, and then ghosted her. And that she had basically been doing charity work by even agreeing to do this song with her. And then she mocked her appearance and said the song would have been better as a solo project anyway. Someone then told Azealia that the real reason Slater backed out was because she considered working with Azealia bad media. And then Azealia says the white girls in the industry are intimidated by her and used her aggression as an excuse for why things always fall apart. Slater responds saying that she had idolized Azealia since high school but had been ghosting multiple collaborators at the time while dealing with personal stuff, and that it had nothing to do with Azealia specifically. Azealia says that she was clearly wasting her time just so she could manufacture a public feud with Azealia Banks for clout, and also accused her of listening to pop girls who were jealous and sabotaging the collab by telling her not to do it. Slater says she never wanted a Twitter beef and hoped it would just go away. Azealia calls her an Abra broke bum users, and a real artist would have cleanly turned down the collab instead of ghosting. True. Now, some people think the real reason behind all of this was actually Slater's close association with Charli XCX. Azealia, as we know, has a long history with Charli. As of 2019, they still seemed pretty cordial. Like, Azealia was openly saying that she saw the similarity between Charli's 5 in the Morning video and Anna Wintour, but that she wasn't mad because the song was really cool, and they were putting each other on playlists, and Charli to this day has really never said anything less than positive about Azealia publicly ever. But then Azealia posted screenshots of a text where she wrote that Charli had a not fully white inferiority complex and that the success of Fancy and watching Iggy surpassed her with her head. And since then, she has called Charli an ashtray, accused her of copying her aesthetic repeatedly, ripped off the Atlantis video, said Vroom Vroom was basically a knockoff of Heavy Metal and Reflective, said the last genuinely good Charli song was Boom Clap, and has made comment after comment about her voice and her music. And even during the Slater thing, she gets on her SoundCloud podcast to drag all three of them. Did you guys know that Azealia Banks had a podcast? I always hear people saying that Azealia Banks needs a podcast. She needs a talk show. And it's like, do we really need to hear more of Azealia Banks' thoughts? But she did have a podcast that none of you listen to. In it, she calls Kim Petras a
square jaw. Get the out of my mentions. Like,
and a culture vulture, says people only pay attention to her because she's trans, not because of talent. Accuses Kim of being involved in predatory behavior with producer Jesse St. John, who is a close associate of Dr. Luke. Calls Slater's music just what Charli XCX thinks she sounds like, and reiterates that Charli's music is really bad.
Really bad.
And she's a thief.
Like Grimes, Kim Petras, and like Slater's like, she's so mean, she's such a bad person, and you know, just kind of using the typical things that you would use to kind of make a black girl look insane. Like she's angry, she's manic, she's this, she's that, and it's just kind of like, you have insecurity and you're trying to do these kind of like backwards things to kind of get me in a position where you feel like you're above me, you know?
Since then though, Slater and Azealia have revisited the idea of working together, but given their track record, not likely. And then there's the Vince Staples situation, which starts because she's on Twitter going off about a bunch of things and says that she would rather be on a date with Vince Staples than argue with her gay fans online. And then someone tells her that Vince liked and then unliked the tweet about her, and she starts dragging him for ghosting her after she sent him a song. And Vince says that she did not ask him for a proper feature. She asked him to mumble a flow for a song that she was doing with the Spice Girl. And you know, he still likes her and she's one of his favorite rappers, but she could have just sent him the song instead of making it public. Azealia says he changed his number the day after they spoke and left her on red and was doing a social media stunt. And then there's a canceled collab with James Blake, and Azealia claims that he canceled because she said that she didn't like Lena Dunham, and she brings this up in an argument with Jamila Jamil, who is James Blake's long-term partner. And she has had this on and off thing with Jamila over the flat tummy tea and Jamila criticizing rapper Cupcake. And after this, Azealia calls Jamila the white feminist token brown representative and says that she's toxic and hates herself. But I do need to say that as annoying as Jamila Jamil is, Azealia has said nastier things about Cupcake, so that particular argument is not one she gets to win. And her commentary is also steeped in anti-blackness constantly. This is the same year that she starts calling Lizzo Fat Lizzo.
I see you fat Lizzo. I see what you're trying to do. You stole Cupcake swag, and now you all out here talking about I'm a female rapper. You ain't no female rapper. You don't got enough sex appeal to be no female rapper. Don't let Craig Kalman gas you, Lizzo. You still a fat, boring. You still a fat, boring hipster rapper. I hate you, fat Lizzo. I
hit you, girl.
Accuses her of playing into the millennial mammy caricature and the sassy fat black girl stereotype, and she calls Lil Nas X's Old Town Road a buck break anthem. She also mocked Megan Thee Stallion getting shot and then accused her of exploiting Breonna Taylor's death. And obviously at this juncture, it is not a new discovery that Azealia Banks has deeply contradicting viewpoints. Like, this is the same woman who truly believes that she is the queen of the gays while constantly using slurs against gay people, and then you have the mountains of anti-trans rhetoric and the anti-prep rant and mocking gender-affirming care as castration funds, and it just goes on and on. But unlike the black community, a lot of her LGBT fans are overly eager to give her chance after chance, so much so that she is somehow consistently being invited back into these spaces and then disrespecting them. In 2022, she gets booked for Winewood Pride, and when the Miami Herald asked the organizers why on earth they would have Azealia Banks perform at Pride, the organizer got up there like, she apologized and we believe in redemption culture, not cancel culture. And then they obviously regret it because she shows up late. Then mid-set, she stops performing to complain about the event organizers. And people start yelling at her to go home, and she stops again to tell the audience that she did not want to be there. And then came the booze, and they cut her mic, and she threw it, and someone threw a water bottle at her as she walked off. And the next morning, she says the promoter moved her set to set her up, and that there was dry ice that gave her an allergic reaction. And you know, after all of this, people still came to her defense because she was clearly unwell, and that does become the thing now. A lot of people, including myself, held the opinion that Kanye got away with a lot of things Azealia was completely written off for, simply because he struggled with his mental health, and she was not given any grace even as her seemingly manic episodes became increasingly persistent. So in January 2019, she gets on an Aer Lingus flight, and from what Azealia tells us, there was a female crew member who starts harassing her, then claimed Azealia had made threats, and security gets involved, and she says that she's being surrounded and treated like an animal, and she gets removed from the plane and effectively banned from the airline entirely. The airline told a completely different story. They said she and someone she was traveling with were being disruptive and chose to get off the plane themselves and delayed the flight in the process. Then she gets on Instagram and she's going back and forth with Irish people, and she starts calling Irish people inbred and leprechauns and telling them to go die in a famine. And then the Irish people start calling her racist and then start flooding her comments and DMs with racist comments. And around that same time, there was also reports of another incident on a Scandinavian Airlines flight. So now she's also beefing with Sweden in some kind of situation at a Dallas barbecue. And then the pandemic happens, and I think a lot of people went through dark periods during lockdown. And I think for Azealia specifically, who was already not well, the pandemic just turned that up to 10. In early 2020, she posts on her Instagram story panicking because her neighbor had threatened her with a gun for playing loud music. And she posts her address and asks fans to come to her house so she could have backup because she did not feel safe calling the police alone as the only other black person on her street. And a bunch of her fans showed up and they had a house party, and there was apparently also some question about whether she was even supposed to be living in that house. And she continued to make a series of alarming posts all throughout the pandemic. She posted a video of herself digging up her dead cat named Lucifer because she wanted to have it taxidermied. And then she goes on some Australian radio show and shows them a human skull that she bought from a website. And somewhere in the middle of all this, she gets engaged to Ryder Ripps, some creative director. He has ties to Kanye and Grimes and Zara Larsson. Azealia actually posts screenshots of texts where Ryder was body shaming Zara, and she ends up firing him seemingly because of this. They also recorded an audio sex tape together and turned it into an NFT that allegedly sold for $17,000 in crypto. This relationship does not last very long. The reason she gives for ending the engagement is that he was too insecure for the wildly creative she-wolf in her. And I want you to know that this entire relationship from the engagement to the breakup lasted less than a month. After this, she reveals that she's actually open to dating Kanye West. Azealia Banks has been aligning herself with Kanye for the past years. She's mentioned that she's heard from people that he's obsessed with her, from people he's worked with, allegedly. And as we may remember, she said that she's tried to do creative endeavors with both Kanye and Kim, but they've all led nowhere. And in June, she releases a song originally titled Kanye West with his name written on her nails in the cover art. And she continues to speak about him in the press, sometimes praising him, other times dragging him. She really got at him during his whole deal with Kim Kardashian and then him bringing North West into it. But by 2022, Azealia is fully done with Kanye and has moved on to beefing with his ex-rebound, Julia Fox. So for context, Kanye and Julia Fox of Uncut Gems fame had this very public and very strange relationship post Kim divorce and pre Bianca, and then it ended pretty quickly, and Julia came out and addressed it publicly and said that she was fine and they were still on good terms and she might save the full tea for a book someday. Azealia calls the whole relationship a PR stunt and accuses Julia of hustling Kanye and threatens her own tell-all, and then she accuses Julia of being a addict and refers to Julia's son as a crack baby. Julia then posts texts that appear to show Azealia asking whether Julia knew anyone selling, and also text showing Azealia asking to get photographed with her and asking Julia for help getting a hotel. Azealia says the drug text was for someone else, and then posts more alleged texts from Julia and a photo of Julia doing some sort of, I don't know, B12 shot, and Julia threatens to put hands on her.
At the base of all of this is the fact that Kanye West has not paid me my money. I don't give a fuck, Julia Fox. I wish I was like as mad as she wants me to be. Bitch in my phone talking about, oh, I can't wait to see your 90-pound. Like, that's ghetto. 2022, we don't do that fighting. But actually, I would love for you to try it. I'd love it because you've already put it in writing. It's on my phone. I would actually love for you to touch me so I can put you in jail and make you even more deadbeat mother than you already are.
So as the world comes out of the pandemic and all the setbacks of lockdown, Azealia comes out and once again baits us with a comeback. And she's teasing a new single, she's reviving talk of Fantasea 2 and Business and Pleasure, and she even signs with UK-based label Parlophone Records, and predictably, this only lasts a few months. She says she only signed with them to find a home for Fantasea 2 and that their A&R team was being non-committal, and they got into it over how to market her new projects, and the staff is full of really silly, fragile white liars, their roster is full of corny losers, and she's had enough. And New Bottega will be on platforms this week. New Bottega is the new single she's currently pushing. It was teased on her Instagram stories as a snippet. After several delays, which, if you've been following Azealia's career, delays are basically a given at this point. The song comes out on March 10th through this Australian dance label Sweat It Out as a collab with house producer Torn Foot. He posts about it on his Instagram and tells his very wholesome origin story about how he made the beat in his bedroom, licensed it to a label called Sweat It Out Music, and they brought Azealia in to write and perform a feature vocal on top of it. But Azealia argues that's not how it happened at all. Her version is that the beat was not an original and it was built around a sample that she had extracted from a Cassie remix he made that she had reproduced, and that she had paid out of pocket for the mix and master and wrote the song and conceptualized everything. And in her words, Torn Foot was literally stealing. She also says she did not recognize the cover art and accused the team of trying to release the song without proper split sheets, crediting her and a collaborator named Chad Dexter for somewhere between 20 and 25% of the production. And she said that this was not the first time things were added to her music without her approval. So then the label Sweat It Out sends her a formal cease and desist. They tell her to basically stop with the stunts or face legal proceedings, and Azealia laughed in their face. Despite threatening to sue her, they went ahead and released what she described as an uncleared, unmixed, altered, and unmastered version of her song, and she said Sony Music Group was not going to let it slide and predicted that they would end up with nothing. She also says if they had actually had the money to spend, they would have invested in a music video with her to actually promote the record instead of sending legal threats. She begged them to take their money back once she realized that they were blocking her from higher profile brand deals and fashion placements, which raises the question, what higher profile brand deals? Who is trying to book Azealia Banks for major campaigns in 2023? But most importantly, the music hits a predictable dead end, and what fills the space is more Azealia Banks musings and commentary on whatever the current thing is. So in 2022, Beyonce drops Break My Soul as the lead single for Renaissance, and because it's a house record, the likely response from a bunch of stans is to bring up Azealia Banks, the only person in their frame of reference for house pop. And fans start making mashups of Break My Soul with Azealia Banks songs, and she hated them. Then she accuses Beyonce of stealing from Robin S, even though Robin S is credited on the song. Then Metro UK releases an article claiming that Renaissance was inspired by paying attention to songs by people like Mr. Jam, David Asante, MNEK, Camille, and early Azealia Banks, according to a source. Azealia responded as if these were words that actually left Beyonce's mouth. She also comes from Rock Nation and praises Chris Brown of all people. And if you didn't know, Azealia Banks really loves Chris Brown, and he's been making incredible house music according to her. When Renaissance actually drops, Azealia loses her mind. She posts multiple coke rants about this album for weeks. When someone later says Beyonce should have sampled her on Renaissance, Azealia says Beyonce knew better because she would have sued everyone in sight. At one point, she even buys tickets to the Miami stop on the Renaissance tour, only to later announce that she stayed home because she didn't want to leave the comfort of her mansion to watch what she called Giselle and Blue Ivy's cabaret.
Okay, I'm sorry, but this is really creepy. Like, Beyonce has been trying to write me out of my own narrative for like years at this point. Like, this is so weird.
She does the exact same thing after Cowboy Carter drops, and like Azealia had already started hating from the Super Bowl tease and was swearing up and down that Texas Hold'em was going to get clowned. Then it doesn't get clowned, and now it's only successful because Beyonce is pandering to white women, and now she's white Beyonce Donatella Bianca Bardot, and she's embarrassing for moving from Black Parade to what Azealia is calling white woman cosplay. She accuses Beyonce of erasing struggling black country artists, ignoring the fact that Cowboy Carter is literally packed with black country artists. I don't believe Azealia Banks even cares about black country artists or country music to begin with. I do give Azealia her 10s for getting on Lily Allen after she also made silly critiques of the album. Side note, she also claims that Lily Allen once called her crying, begging for forgiveness after randomly being racist. Am I crazy for believing this? Now, of course, where there is Beyonce commentary from Azealia Banks, Nicki Minaj is not far behind. As far as we know, the two had briefly reconciled. However, that did not last very long. Since then, she's accused Nicki of copying her, blamed Nicki for the toxic state of female rap competition, has dragged her for hanging out with 6ix9ine and marrying a rapist, compare her to Cardi B, who she now likes, even more so since Cardi reached out to her, and she's inserting herself into whatever broader female rap discourse is going on. When Lotto and Nicki are beefing over Grammys, Azealia jumps in and says Nicki needs mental health help because of how angry she is, and beefing with other women online is clearly more important to her than raising her child, and then she calls Nicki a boring ass crybaby. Fast forward to the Nicki and Megan beef. Okay, so Megan drops Hiss, and there's like a seemingly Nicki drag in it, and we get the most disgusting spiral of Nicki Minaj's entire life, and probably the worst song of her career. And almost immediately after the incoherent live streams from Nicki, we get Azalea's take on Nicki's antics in the Megan situation, and what she basically argues is that Nicki's problem with Meg has everything to do with Jay-Z. According to Azealia, Jay-Z has always been portrayed as a paternal figure in rap culture, right? And a lot of women who choose rap as their career path, they suffer from the absence of a father figure, and so Azealia is saying that Nicki clings to Jay-Z in that sense like he's her father figure, and Nicki feels ignored by Jay-Z because she's always wanted to be part of Roc Nation, but then Jay goes and signs Meg, which sparks all of this jealousy in Nicki because she wanted to be the one. And then Azealia goes even further and says that Jay-Z doesn't even actually care about Megan or her music and is using her for other business ventures. She also says it's clear that Nicki is going through financial difficulties, and you can tell there's something clearly wrong with her. She warns that Nicki's behavior could invite legal trouble, and she's specifically bringing up airports and TSA and the possibility of someone in Nicki's camp getting caught with something. And then Nicki actually does get detained in the Netherlands for alleged possession. Then, when Ice Spice and Lotto are arguing over God knows what, Azealia says that they were just young, bright talents being manipulated specifically by Nicki Minaj into fighting each other. She uses the Ice and Lotto post to sneak in shade at JT and Young Miami, and she's telling Lotto to change her name back to a racial slur, and then she's bringing up the Drake and Kendrick beef for literally no reason other than to remind everyone that she has a long-standing one-sided beef with Kendrick that's been going on since 2015, and she has all these proxy beefs with people associated with him, including Doechii. So Doechii is signed to Top Dog Entertainment, the label that's closely associated with Kendrick Lamar, even though Kendrick has since moved more independently in recent years. But Doechii is there, and back in 2022, Doechii, who's newly signed to TDE, reaches out to Azealia for a feature, and she's clearly a fan and is very respectful. Azealia responds pretty positively, but then 12 hours pass, and like clockwork, the collaboration is no longer, and Azealia is mocking Doechii for even mentioning it.
You got this like Doechii chick who I have no clue who she is. She's been having like this months-long dialogue with some fake Azalea's account, and like I guess thinks that I owe her some sort of like collab, like honey, no.
Fast forward to 2024 and people start to notice similarities between Doechii and JT's song, Alter Ego, and Azealia Banks' sound. And to be fair, there are clear influences, I can see that. And Azealia obviously sees that too, but she claims that it's not her sound while also accusing Doechii of copying her sound. And then Azealia really shows her because she jumps on Instagram calling Doechii an ugly version of herself, even though she says she hates to call dark-skinned women ugly. From my understanding, she's never had a problem calling dark-skinned women tar babies, greasy, unkempt, disgusting, nitpicking their bodies, and she does it gleefully. And in that same story, she's claiming that Kendrick Lamar and TDE were using Doechii as a weapon against her. Like, why TDE or Kendrick would spend nearly a decade plotting to sick a new artist as revenge against Azealia Banks is absurd. Doechii ignores her and her antics completely, and she even gives Azealia some grace. Like, she acknowledges that hurt people, and Azealia responds with laughing emojis. And then Doechii makes a post asking her fans what they should call themselves, and Azealia comments that they should call themselves the wannabes. And Doechii finally replies, and she tells Azealia that she's been ignoring Azalea's comments out of respect for her elders, but enough is enough, and it's not her fault that Azealia is selling so while she's selling platinum records. And then Azealia goes on one of her little Twitter rants about how Doechii's an industry plant and she has yellow teeth and she's smoking menthols. And then somehow Azealia is saying Doechii's homophobic for mentioning the bussy soaps, while Azealia herself is saying homophobic stuff in this same breath. So Doechii responds again, and she gets on her story and gives Azealia the response she's been begging for the whole time. And Doechii basically tells her that she doesn't make art, she just sits on the internet all day talking about people who actually do make art, and she's done in 2 years what Azealia couldn't do in her entire career because she's too busy gossiping about black artists and selling Mary Kay products. And my favorite part of Doechii's whole read is when she basically says that Azealia should be tired being an attack dog for the same white gay men she allegedly despises, when that's the only audience that wants to watch two black women go at each other's throats. And then the same exact pattern repeats with Lil Nas X. She first says that she's interested in working with him, he reaches out for a song, and then seemingly out of nowhere she flips and calls him washed and insults him publicly, and it turns into a whole back and forth that ends with him dragging her. And then Azealia calls him a slur, but then he apologizes to her for some reason. I don't know. But she does not let this go. Like, the fingers were hot that day. And then just when you think it can't get any sadder, we have the 2024 election. And like, we know what Azealia Banks does during election cycles. Luckily for all of us, we were spared her thoughts on Obama's re-election. But by 2016, she is publicly endorsing Donald Trump and then backpedaling and then popping back up around him again in 2020. She's on right-wing conservative social media sites spewing nonsense. She moves to Miami because she was sick of performative liberal politics. She's marching in Trump rallies. She's praising Ron DeSantis. Trump even reposts her on his little conservative social media site. The not so great thing about Azealia Banks, though, is while pushing hard on right-wing politics that will end up hurting her in the end, she will randomly drag Candace Owens for being against Juneteenth, and over her anti-trans tweets, she goes after J.K. Rowling, and she's mocking the January 6th Methy clown show, and she hates Elon Musk, which we already knew. But she still spends a good portion of 2024 heavily endorsing Donald Trump. And then the day before election day, Azealia reveals that she's actually going to vote for Kamala Harris because Elon Musk doesn't belong anywhere near American politics. Psych. Following the election, Azealia Banks reveals that she actually decided to vote for Donald Trump, and throughout the following hours, she's replying to tweets and tweeting more support for Trump, and is still on about these tax breaks. But you know how this plays out by now. In April 2024, she expresses regret for voting for Trump. She didn't vote for this. Okay, so this is me coming to you literally months later to finally like close up this video and wrap things up. So when it comes to Azealia Banks, like, she is truly a cautionary tale on self-sabotage. And in a lot of ways, she belongs somewhere in conversation with like a Sky Ferreira or an MIA and other artists who could not get out of their own way. And then of course you got Kanye West and Nicki Minaj in that conversation too, though like they managed to survive their worst impulses for a while in ways that Azealia just hasn't been able to. And like them too, the people have bent over backwards to grant endless grace to her. Even in the early 2020s, especially through TikTok, there was a new audience of people who helped keep her name culturally alive. Again, not really reviving her actual career, even though she had a few songs gain some virality again, but she quickly just became meme fodder. Hey there, you hey there. But even that didn't last long. I believe all the stan accounts she had over there have since ceased. Then since the end of 2024, whatever ironic affection or grace remained just started to like disappear. In February 2025, Milkshake Festival dropped her from the lineup over backlash from her anti-LGBTQ remarks, and then she's body shaming BB Rexa into revealing a pregnancy loss and defending Trump again, and then defending Epstein. I think there was something with Conor McGregor I don't know. She publicly announces that she is a Zionist, and she posts that no black person should be supporting Palestine, and then in October, she performs in Tel Aviv, draped in an Israeli flag, wearing a Star of David necklace. Sometime after this, she reversed her stance on Israel and accused them of doing her dirty. She also claims that she was paid to post about Israel. She had already been very vocal about the racism she experienced while in Tel Aviv years before this, so it was surprising to some to see her be so avidly pro-Israel. For all I know, she could be back to being a Zionist in the next couple weeks. But a lot of people finally saw this as the last straw when it came to giving Azealia Banks 24 hours of attention. But I think as long as Elon Musk still runs the Twitter, she's gonna be fine over there. Like, she'll always have a platform to say whatever she wants to say. And even now, like, she's still on Twitter, still talking into the ether, still arguing with whoever will go back and forth. But unless things truly change, like, I don't think an Azealia Banks comeback, if there's even anything to come back to, is even worth entertaining. On the topic of dead on arrival comebacks, right when I'm finishing this video, Azealia Banks has officially released her second studio album called Azealia, co-produced with some Swedish DJ. The album is an hour-long spoken word guided meditation, and like, obviously this is not what anyone would even imagine as a comeback. Just a couple days ago now, when she was asked to return to music again, she said, "I wish I could, but unfortunately nobody will work with me now. The only people who will are all in Tel Aviv." Weird times. There's obviously a group of people who still defend her, like they defend most terrible celebrities by pulling the sympathy card. Azealia has spoken publicly for years about abuse from her mother, who has since passed. I know in 2017, she alleged that Dave Holmes, former Coldplay manager, abused her when she was 18. And she was even in a 2024 lawsuit against Diplo, and Azealia has already alleged that he preyed on her and other underage black girls. And you may know his relationship with Quinn Blackwell.
Go back to that one time I was getting groomed and all the 40-year-olds around me were like, y'all souls are just so in sync. Like, can anyone call the police? Because
I will even give her the benefit of the doubt and say that she was wronged in a lot of her label disputes and has been dealt a bad hand when it comes to working with other artists as well. And I think a lot of these things could explain a lot of her antics, but you can only sympathize so much for someone who shows no signs of changing and is dedicated to being nasty. But that is really all I have to say. I know I say this a lot, but I'm trying to post more, and I really don't know why I haven't posted in over a year. Like, this video should not have taken as long as it has, but hopefully I can get back into a flow because I have already started and I'm almost finished working on other things. So fingers crossed. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this, and I tried to include everything that I could. And I'm definitely forgetting a lot, and I've intentionally disregarded a lot for the sake of time and a little laziness. But yeah, again, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you guys all next time in the very near future. Bye.